Jack's RPG Podcast. I'm in Max. Pursuing the RPG hobby with reckless abandon.
Welcome to Costco. I love you.
Thank you for joining us for Season 19, Episode 17 of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Gina.
And as always, I'm here, and I'm still, and probably shall be, because I never leave here, Stork.
Yeah, that's what that room is.
That's where I live.
That's his hovel.
It is.
That's the under beneath that Stork lives in with a cot.
Right.
It's actually just like a dirty mattress on the floor.
He has some pictures.
Yeah.
Don't laugh. I think everybody's been to the dirty mattress on the floor. I
yeah.
mean, I lived in a frat house for a while.
Found a little bookshelf in the alley
Yeah.
once. We brought it over.
Oh, yeah. I actually still have a bunch of cinder block and 2x4 shelves. Yeah. 1x12 shelves, but.
And now people can see us. Hi.
Yep. Hi.
Hi.
There we are. And we're still us.
We're still
us.
Yeah.
In this episode of Happy Jack's RPG Podcast, Len from Miami sends some thoughts on character backstory. Chris in Long Beach writes in to suggest that your first shouldn't be your player's first.
Ooh.
Stephen SW sends a PBTA, well, actually, about falling damage.
Oh, cool.
Look,
And-
I have the stare test. That's
I
for me.
listened to that episode, so right on.
And Kenigma sends us some things he's learned about RPGs. But first, if you'd like to email us, you can email us at happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. That's happyjacksrpg@gmail.com. We have a Twitter, happyjacksrpg, all one word, and also that's our Instagram's account as well. You can watch the show live at happyjacks.org/live, where you can get the Twitch link and the YouTube link and the chat room. And I haven't brought the chat room up, but I will shortly, I swear. So hi, chat room, if there's anyone in there. I think that's it.
Smoke signals. Stu learned smoke signals.
I
when he was Eagle
learned
Scout.
I can do chat room on my iPad if you want.
Oh,
Or if
well,
you'd rather do
I'll
it,
bring it up in a second.
I'm good with
I still
that.
have to rename everything, but I wanted to start as close to on
Cool.
time as I possibly could. Would someone like to read the first email while I do all of the stuff real quick?
I can do that thing for you if you wish. Hello, Gilded Guardians of the Massingale throne? I think it's supposed to be Massingale. I get it. Massingale, because they make douches. I get it. I see. Okay. This is Len from Miami speaking. It is I, Len from Miami, back after a long hiatus. I'm most of the way through the 60-episode backlog of accreted RPG goodness that built up during my absence. But I wanted to momentarily pause my podcast enema to share a thought about
Sorry.
a hopefully not too stale topic. If this has already been addressed, well, we can always talk about armor class.
Yeah.
The topic. Who owns a character's backstory? In that episode, you did a great job of explaining why the GM should be able to muck with the character's backstory. I agree with everything you said, but I think you missed something important. If the player doesn't want you to mess with their backstory, if you can't get that person to understand why this is awesome, if they just won't buy into this, then don't do it. Consider the goal. The main reason you bring a player's backstory into the game is to get the player more invested. Is it the only reason? Maybe not, but it's the main reason. To make the story about them in some way and to make the game more interesting for them. If a player doesn't want their backstory messed with, if this will upset them, then you definitely aren't going to get them more invested by kicking them in their precious narrative nutsack. The question is, who, quote, owns the backstory? Doesn't matter. It's not about control or agency or anything like that. Once the player says no, bringing in or mucking with their backstory is not going to accomplish the goal of getting that player more invested in the game. If anything, it's going to piss them off to maybe have an opposite and chilling effect. When it comes to the PC backstory, no means no. That's all for now. I feel like I'm reconnecting with long-lost friends, internet friends, the kind you think you know intimately well, who are always one step away from taking out a restraining order on you. It's nice to be home, even in handcuffs. Len from Miami. And that is an interesting thing.
Yeah.
I think a distinction needs to be made between messing with a backstory and using a backstory. Because the player made the character, the player determines what the backstory is. I have a mom and I have a sister and she went off to a convent and whatever. That's the players. That's part of player agency. This
Yeah.
is who my character is. These are the people in my character's lives, and this is what their lives were up to the time the game starts. What happens to those NPCs afterwards? That's the purview of the GM. Maybe in consultation with the player, but as we've always said, the players control their characters, and that's all they got.
Up until the point that the game starts.
Well, they control their characters even after the game
okay,
starts.
yeah. All right.
But the GM doesn't mess with the characters, but the GM is in charge of all the NPCs.
Well, just like a GM only controls as much as until the moment they step up to the table, when the players can do
Right.
all sorts of kicking the GM and the narrative nuts.
Exactly.
That was a nice turn of phrase, by the way.
Yeah.
That
The
was
narrative
awesome.
nutsack?
Yeah. Yeah.
The narrative narrative sack?
Yeah.
I know what you're saying, and maybe I don't want to. I learned years ago in college that a terrible discussion / argument is when you go down to parsing words.
Right.
When
Well,
it's
that's why I
arguing
started
a
with that.
verb or
That's why I'm
arguing
starting
with
with
what
that.
is. I mean, that makes for a non-discussion, a non-starter, and it really just turns into the fact that people have dug themselves in and they're being transient. And when you start arguing that, but I get what you're saying. I understand what you're saying, which is they've created this backstory. They have set up these parameters, and their mom and sister and all that are precious to them, but that doesn't mean that the story can't involve them. Messing with is a tricky verb.
Well, what is messing?
Exploiting is a tricky verb, but utilizing this wonderful
I can think
resource.
of examples that, but I think you have to let yourself have a little bit of a, I don't know, narrative or creative distance. Like, say I create a character and one of my character's key motivating or like a touchstone, like you would have maybe in Vampire or whatever, but like one of my character's touchstones is that I have a very close relationship with a brother. Like, this is for whatever reason, like we're super
Is this from a
bonded.
natural character you have, or
No,
maybe
but I've had things like this happen where if you wanted to, as a GM, kill off that character after, maybe I had established like how meaningful that relationship is, it might kick me in the narrative nutsack initially, where I'd be like, this is like one of the major identifiers of this character. This is how she kind of identifies this relationship as super meaningful. But then I think if you allow yourself to kind of step back and look at the story opportunities that develop from that even that should be okay.
All right, let's try it this way.
Okay.
Is there a time that you would not utilize a character's backstory? When is it not okay?
If it's boring.
That's a good answer.
When is a character's backstory boring? I mean, yeah, we know he has no parents, no father, but when, I mean, they don't give a GM anything to use? Is that what you mean by boring?
Yeah. I mean, or
It's hyper.
well, I
tropes.
say boring, but I mean, it is often difficult to try to shoehorn some people's backstories in, especially the more specific they get, the more difficult it is. Example. Jessie in our vampire game, part of her backstory is that she's looking for her brother, who is also a vampire and was turned, and he has disappeared. So she is looking for him. That's a real hard thing to shoehorn into a vampire game, because at least in the modern nights, how often do vampires travel? Travel's dangerous. You got to make sure you've got some place to stay during the day, and you got to make sure if you're going into someone else's domain that they're not going to be hostile toward you.
The only ones that really travel are gangrels, because they can like disappear into the ground, and they have like some abilities to not be hunted and tracked. Yeah.
For them, it's built. That's built into their character, right?
Yeah, they're wanderers.
But for most, all, I mean, there might be other ones that have that. That's Protean.
Yeah.
Yes.
Protean is the
Right.
into the ground.
The dirt nap.
Yeah.
there might be other ones that have protean.
Well,
I don't know if
there's a couple of traits you can get too, like which is King of the Road or something which allows you to travel through territories and not be trapped.
There's stuff to specifically allow that, but also in that game, the party is tied to a place.
Yep.
There's a domain that one of the characters is prince of.
And I think that's true of most vampires. They're all in a domain.
Princes don't want to leave their domain, because if they leave their domain, what's going to happen?
Yeah.
I don't even have to say it,
Yeah.
right? So that was a real challenging thing to try to shoehorn in, because if your characters are already in a modern age where travel's not difficult, and they are basically bound to a very finite area.
How do you disappear?
And give the person leads to go and try to find them? Because what you don't want to do inadvertently is have them lead them to believe that the person has left town, because the impetus for their character is going to be to leave, especially if that's a real is a brother and it's a very tight, close bond.
I can tell you what I would think, but I mean, I would have him staked and put in a box at the bottom of the bay, and then she finds the buoy and pulls him up. But that's a whole. Because that's the only way a vampire can disappear, because he's only staked and they're not dead; they're in torpor. And
I did eventually come up with sort of an answer as to what it is he is doing, and he is staying relatively local.
But he's under the radar.
He's under the radar, and but it took,
as you would,
especially
a lot of consideration and some reading to figure that out.
But this will be a nice preamble, because Sunday will be our next Moat game without Jesse. So there might be some things.
So I don't have to worry about it.
Yeah.
But it is.
So bringing it back to the topic.
So there are times when the backstory isn't as usable to me, because it's like, if it was a traveling game, that's perfect. That's an impetus for travel. Okay, the party, we're going to pack everything up. We're going to head to the next town, because Jessie's character has a lead that her brother might be there, and maybe there's for some other reason we're going that way too.
Okay, it just struck me that when I made my vampire character, I left a lot of untied threads that I handed to Stu. And Stu asked questions. And that's another thing maybe to touch on, which is if people make this sort of isolated paragraph of their backstory, it's a different thing as opposed to Stu, who asks a couple of pages of questions: who you relation to, who's your closest, how do they die, or whatever it is. He's got a list of questions that he wants answered, because it gives him, first of all, it gives you as a person playing this character a backstory that you hadn't thought about before, and also gives him some ammunition, I guess, or something interesting to pick from. And I know that I answered all my questions open-ended, because when we played the vampire game, and I think it's fair to say, he picked up most of my backstory and used it against all of us for, I don't know, close to a year. To the point where I think I've run out of backstory.
Right.
Whereas everybody else still has a pretty much untouched backstory in the game. And it's not a judgy thing. I'm just saying that
absolutely.
I made a really open-ended backstory thing because I thought it was fun and interesting and more easy, perhaps.
No, I hit upon Samantha's backstory. Her sire got taken. Was probably one of the.
I'm not saying you haven't, but I'm saying that mine was really. It was set up that way, and I didn't even think about it because I'm not uncomfortable, I guess, with my story being used. But is it fair to say that a lot of the other backstories were harder to crack than, say, mine? Or I don't want to say less interesting.
Yours is more fertile.
Okay, that's a good word.
Enemies is always a nice thing to have for a GM.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
Having
totally.
people that your character in the past has pissed off or that you're pissed at is, I mean, and you know, you were talking about the term exploit being a loaded term, kind of, but that's really what the backstory's for.
For story, though. It's not to, like, I'm going to poke at your psyche.
I mean, the most GMs are going to use the characters, and it's usually characters, in your backstory to create an impetus for action.
That's a story. Isn't that what stories are?
Right. I mean, and that's what it's there for. That's why they want it. And I think having that understanding is important for players to think, well, I don't want to have a backstory because I don't want you to make me do something I don't want to do.
Well, and there it is. That's it.
Welcome to life, right?
Yeah, I guess I have a hard time understanding that
Right.
aspect of it. I did have something similar where I had a pretty strong character identity. Oh, I also, like the brother situation, but I also had a character who was a female cleric. This was a Pathfinder game, and I am not going to remember the god, but basically she was like a dominatrix, because it's like somebody knows this. It's whatever. So it's like some sort of artistic sexual pleasure, da-da-da-da. But we were playing with her name was Mary Harrow, so Merry Harrow, and we played with a Harrow deck. And I drew a card at one point which changed the sex of my character. And that kind of freaked me out for a game, because I was like, I had built this whole identity on my character based on, what I pictured her being, and then took a minute and a half, took a little longer, but like I'm like, oh, I can do this because whatever magic or enchantment befell that changed her from a woman to a man or whatever. It's like, this is how I'm going to play this character.
Right.
But so I can see it kind of rocking people's worlds sometimes.
Well,
but I don't think that's a bad thing.
And
Right.
I can see that being maybe a line you don't want to cross. If you just start actively effing with your player character, like, hey, you just drank that potion, you're now a guy, or you're now a dog, or suddenly everybody hates you. That's just kind of vindictive and messy. I'm talking about mining the backstory for nuggets and having that influence the story, because all great fantasy stories, all great stories have stuff from the person's background coming back to haunt them, coming back to affect them. Everything from the Grapes of Wrath to The Hobbit have these interesting people from the back, from their past and from their life come back and influence them. And I don't think that that's wrong. But turning your player character from guy to a girl just on the whim because that's kind of a dick move.
Well, there was, it's like...
I get it's a random event.
Yeah, exactly.
But that was different to my mind.
That was a bigger change than anyone probably had with a card. I play another character in a Coriolis game. So Coriolis is a free league, Fria Ligen, Swedish game company, does Mutant Year Zero. And this is a sci-fi game where religion is super important, and there are the 9 icons, the 9, and you are born with an icon that is your god, and you have to have, that's how you identify. So it's part of your character, and we're playing, and there's a GM mechanic called darkness points that you can use to change narrative, and it's sort of kind of like how we use moments of truth, where you can use 3 characters, create an NPC, or 2 to have a scene detail. So they can use 1 to 3 darkness points to affect the game or change the scene.
The GM can, or the player?
The GM can.
Okay.
And certain things the players do, like there's a reroll mechanic that you can use in the game. If you pray to an icon, you can reroll, but the GM gets a darkness point. So then they can end up with this fistful of darkness points that they can use for narrative.
Moments of truth.
Right.
Yeah.
Almost sounds a little bit like
Star Wars.
flipping the tokens, right?
Yeah.
Star Wars.
Except the players don't get the light tokens, but a little bit like that, definitely.
Right.
And there was a scene in the game where the GM decided that the fucked up thing that was going to get introduced was that I was going to have an appeal by one of the gods of the 9 to change my god, which is like a huge kind of heretical. But once again, it's like, so it's shifting the way you think. And I had built a religious character, like an uber religious character from a super religious family. So it's like having to accept those kinds of changes.
I think that there needs to be a definition between utilizing somebody's backstory, pulling nuggets and stuff out of it, and completely completely negating or influencing or changing their backstory.
I'm just using those as extreme examples, which I think is part of the thing here.
It is, and that's part of the discussion, and that's what I'm saying. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm not judging. I'm just saying that I think that there does need to be a line, because I can see how you can F up somebody's backstory and completely make that piss off the player. Suddenly, everything is that they knew is now gone. The stuff that they were using for motivations is now null and void. And I think a GM can overstep their bounds. It can exploit that to it can be a problem. But I hope that that's not the case. I think that's the exception.
Oh, I think so too. That's an extreme example of that.
Yeah.
For sure.
But I can see it happening. I can totally see that happening.
And I guess I'm saying that when that's happened to you, maybe the first 1 or 2 times, it kind of can rock your world, but that it, honestly, anytime I've ever had that happen, even in the extreme, it has produced better narrative options and conflict in the story than had it not happened. So it's never been for just to mess with a character or mess with the player. But to your point, 95% of that is really going to be about mining backstory for interesting things.
Yeah.
Even if it's your sister was kidnapped or your brother's missing, or, I mean, those are interesting stories.
Your dad had a heart attack. You need to go home. Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's life. That's stuff. And also, again, I think that it depends on your GM. Stu has a list of things that he asks because he wants to use them. Other GMs just say, write whatever you want. And if you have a really intimate story that you've written out 3 or 4 pages, maybe that's sacred ground. Maybe you don't want to. But to my mind, as a player, I set up a backstory that I want to have used.
Yeah,
I want to be the center of attention. I want to have my dad have a heart attack, and I want to tell everybody, I'm leaving here. You guys have to come with me or I'm gone.
That's
my dad's
totally
dying.
what that is. That's like spotlight opportunity for your character.
Yeah.
And to Stu's point, if you show up and the GM gets signals where that person is that uncomfortable having their story touched on, then that's fine. But they're not. Other characters are going to get more spotlight and more.
Well, yeah, that's the double-edged sword,
Yeah.
right? It's like you can't complain that everybody else is having.
The story's going to be driven more by those characters than it is by the person who's like, "Oh my God, don't touch, don't touch my stuff."
Don't touch my stuff.
Yeah.
Right.
And we'll leave it with that. I like that.
Bump this camera here up just a tiny bit.
Oh, Kimmy's in the.
Too much.
So anyway,
Is that okay or no?
I think that is.
Okay. But I agree with what he's saying, because it's like if they're that uncomfortable with it, then okay, fine.
So and again, who owns the backstory? Is it the player? Is it the GM? Maybe it depends on the kind of game.
The player owns the content of the backstory.
Mm-hmm. But
what happens at the table isn't backstory; it's front story.
I agree.
I agree.
That belongs to everyone at the table. No one has a monopoly.
Testify, brother.
I think that's true.
Done. Thank you for that question. That was good.
Yeah.
I like that. Interesting things.
Absolutely.
Who played what this week?
I played. I ran Bloodblade and Tusk, our second session.
Yeah.
Fun things are happening. We're having a good time with that.
Yeah.
I've never really played. I think maybe I told about it the last time we did Boba. I've never played a historical thing like this before. Like really, and I find myself going home and doing some research. I know Gina has. She went to look up like bows and how to string them.
Oh, definitely.
Also religious cults of the time. Yeah.
Oh, super.
I just bought a book on Christianity in the middle.
That's my high five to you.
In the mid Dark Ages or whatever they call that.
Because I've done tons of research on that. Because
it's
fascinating.
It's a really interesting genre you've set up. I don't know if you knew this or not. Because we're all of
but
us.
I mean, I've gone down a research rabbit hole that I don't think I really intended
to. You took all the players with you. We're all like, wee.
Oh, highly.
I was writing last 3 or 4 nights. I've been up writing more of it. The setting book is now at like 50 pages.
Really?
It's fun. Now, for those of you history grognards out there, it's still a fantasy game. There's still effing magic. There's still, and the gods can actually, and there's more than one god, can actually still affect the world. Yeah. So
and
it's
orcs.
Maybe, or maybe not.
We don't know.
But it's still a fantasy world.
But I
did a lot of research on medieval Catholicism yesterday. The 7 sacraments, who can perform them, and it turns out laypersons can perform a lot of the sacraments even back then.
Okay.
If there were extenuating circumstances.
Eucharistic ministers.
Yeah.
And
exactly.
Monks, clerics.
I mean, obviously,
clergy.
the like ordaining priests, that's going to be a bishop.
Yeah, and I think like confession, no
Yeah, you can't give absolution.
last rites, and yeah.
Well, last rites is Eucharist and confession and anointing the sick.
Yeah.
The oil. The oil can be done by a layperson.
Which kind of makes sense, because if you think about all these, the plagues have happened. There's vast amounts of wilderness between towns.
Oh yeah, what do you do if you have a small town and the priest dies?
Or right. And,
No
and
one
that's-
gets last rites.
And
I
that's
guess
where the
That's
wandering
awesome.
priests, they would travel in these caravans and come through
and that was
move on.
a big deal. I mean, if
truly was.
something happened to your priest, the church stepped right up. They're like, no, we got to get a priest out there. That flock needs to be tended.
So I had to resurrect a bunch of my Catholic. I was struggling for it. I was like, oh my God, I know this. Councils of Perfection. When I was like, I knew the vows, but I was just like, it's called Council of Perfection or
Right.
whatever like that.
And it turns out that the what is it called? The seal of the confessional.
Yeah.
Very serious.
Yeah.
Very serious things. They excommunicated priests who betrayed
Broke the seal.
the seal of confession. So the weird thing is they also would prescribe or require public penance.
In the
Really?
Certain types of sins, the priest would say, and this was doctrinal. It's like, well, if this person did something and you think there might be more people doing it, give them a public penance, and that way they go out into the street, they admit their sin, and they whatever the penance might be, it could just be mocking or getting stuff thrown at them or whatever it is, and that will ensure that other people who are contemplating or engaging in said sin will probably stop as well.
The humiliation of that alone in a small town, where everyone knows your name,
Oh, yeah.
and everyone knows
Yeah.
your parents and your grandparents.
But the weird thing is, what that guy says to the priest during the confessional is absolutely sacrosanct, and he can't give any of that out. But he can tell you to go out and confess your sin to the publicly.
So, for those of you that aren't listening to Blood, Plague, and Tusk,
Yeah.
you probably should, because this is the kind of thing that we have been discussing and that we're now falling down. It's awesome. I've never really played a game that has me this invested in history before. I've done a
No.
Roman Legionnaire thing or whatever, and you kind of, whatever. But
Yeah.
mostly it turns into strategy and Romans, and there's a
Yeah.
lot of sodomy and Caligula. But this is different. We're having fun.
No, I think so too, and I think in a lot of fantasy, and this is a very different kind of. I wouldn't even call it that. It feels more like
Historic kind of
historic yeah.
thing. Or historic, yeah.
Well,
Historic fantasy.
it's got magic too.
yeah,
Yeah.
there's F and magic.
So it is, but it's like it's in a different period than a lot of. 'Cause
It's
more,
earlier,
Yeah,
yes.
because a lot of stuff is like high Middle Ages.
There's no
maybe.
knights in shining armor.
Yep.
There's none of that
Yeah.
kind of stuff. The best
So
kind
it's
of
a
armor you
lot-
got is male shirts.
I was just watching a whole search for King Arthur, and people were talking about who they think it is and all that. And when you strip away all of the pomp and circumstance,
Yeah.
it's probably a Roman legionnaire on a dirt hill that fought a decisive battle between what was.
Oh, sure.
And that was it. And that's who he was. But
Yeah.
then everything got built up upon it. But that's kind of the era that we're dealing with here.
Yep.
It's not Roman. It's after that. But
Yeah.
it's that.
It's
It's an interesting period. It's an interesting
it's
point.
not the high Middle Ages,
No.
which is kind of what everyone thinks of when they think of the sort of medieval
It's
fantasy.
probably just pre Holy Roman Empire, which is probably
It's Holy Roman Empire.
but probably affected to some extent by the fact that orcs
oh, sure, yeah.
took control over.
No Crusades happened.
Right.
Yeah.
I'm viewing this as just post Dark Ages, but the Crusades
Yeah.
didn't happen. So the plagues and everything have just happened.
Well, the Crusades
And
would
there's
have
lots of empty
The
land.
Crusades would have just started anyway. Isn't that like
It
I
did
don't
go on a
know,
long time.
1165?
Well, it went on
Sure,
a
but
long
guess what
time.
was going on
Yeah.
in France at the time?
Yeah, no,
Right.
exactly.
Yeah, they would have started, but they didn't happen.
Yeah.
Also, they had started Christianizing Britain and Scandinavia, but there again, they have other things to worry about, so that
Yep.
didn't really end. And
Yep.
of course, the Moors are still in the
Iberian Peninsula.
Sound interesting? Want to
Oh,
know more?
Yeah.
Go listen to Blood, Blade, and Tusk. And this is Stu's homebrew,
Yeah.
Moment of Truth.
Yeah.
It's a
Which you can get for free.
It's a really cool setting. Though.
Anyway, that's
It
what
is a
we
very
played.
Cool setting. I played. I know. I
Yeah,
played
you
something
play
else.
you play like
yeah.
5 times a day.
I know. Play a lot of games. Star Wars. FFG. It's a campaign called Rebel Racketeers.
That's one with the dumb dice, right?
With the fancy dice. Yeah, I use
Okay,
the
fancy.
I use the dice roller. It was worth every, I don't know, $4.99 or whatever you pay for
It's
it.
an
I actually did not find the dice that hard to learn.
I don't
After
either. I just think it's easier because when I use the dice roller, it just tells me, and I don't have to go, this cancels this, and I don't have to buy 7 sets of dice.
That's the big
Yeah.
thing, is the price.
Yeah.
That's interesting because I know you like dice and I know you like rolling, and it's
I
interesting
love-
that,
yeah.
this game prompted you to buy the
It
app
actually,
to make it better.
it's a really good, this is a total tangent, but it is an excellent dice app.
yeah.
Because
I've got it,
you
yeah.
can get it to make the dice noises. You can actually just shake, shake the
shake- oh,
tray
really?
on your.
Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Now, a
No,
couple
so
people
it gives
used
you
it
a lot
when
of
I ran
satisfaction.
last when I ran a Star Wars game at the con.
I just
Yeah.
like the
Couple
fact that it
people
streamlines all of that stuff.
It really
does all
does,
that math.
yeah.
Well, it's not even math. It does all of the word parsage for you.
Yeah. We're playing
It
mostly.
interprets the chicken.
Yeah, it
Yes.
does. We're playing mostly an Age of Rebellion game, but we have very different characters. So we've got kind of like a Han Solo sort of ace pilot played by Steven Clockwork.
Nice.
So yeah, and then we've got a
That's so perfect for him.
Verpine mechanic. Verpine sort of bug people.
Mm-hmm.
That's not the ones I'm
And
thinking
he
of. Not
sits at the
big-
table and does this all the time when he's talking. Yeah, and I didn't know that this was his deal, but apparently he's been playing because he's separated from the hive mind. He is just like, he and basically the two characters, Clockwork's, Horkey's character and the Verpine are just like, because we're supposed to be, my character is a diplomat agitator. So I'm supposed to be.
What species are you?
I'm a human. I'm a human, but basically, like, supposed to be sort of rebel.
Sympathizer?
Yeah, like wanting to be part of the
Yeah.
rebellion.
So this is taking place in...
Kind of mostly Age of Rebellion, even though we used the 3 different books to create our characters. I think we got a couple characters out of the first book.
For those that don't know, does that take place between 1 and 2? The movies, New Hope and...
Our game is between 3 and 4 after the Clone Wars.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so just before New Hope. Mm-hmm. All right.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's a lot of fun,
Interesting.
though. We
Yeah.
had a lot of stuff go down and are starting to kind of actually do...
How long have you been playing?
That was our 11th session, so
Wow.
almost a year.
So it's a lot of
Yeah. No, definitely.
character-driven stuff. And
Yeah.
it's taken this long for it to start to really set up and shake down. That's
Yeah.
cool. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And my character has, is it duty for Age of Rebellion? Honor? Duty?
Yeah.
One of those.
Yeah, I think it is
Yeah,
duty.
is
You said duty.
counterintelligence. So it's like that's been tricky to weave in there sometimes. But it's been a lot of fun. So it was a lot of fun.
Cool.
Yeah.
Any other games you played?
Uh,
I know you did.
yeah.
We could sit here all night and listen to
Yeah.
that.
Masks,
Oh,
which
yeah,
you should
Masks.
totally listen to because it was the beginning of we're starting a new arc. So we kind of did our issues 1 through 6, which are, kind of volume 1. If
Masks
you're doing a graphic
is,
novel.
Jibs.
Yeah.
Powered by the Apocalypse. It's their superhero. It's their
Yeah.
It's their superhero game kind of.
Yeah, and that was a pretty good game. We had we told Stu when we were leaving there were like feels at the table, which doesn't happen all that often. I think that you get real kind of emotional sort of gravitas at the table, and we actually at the end of that game had some.
You confided to me
pretty
off camera a couple of
serious-
weeks ago that you had never really grokked the superhero thing,
Absolutely.
but now you got it.
Yeah. No, I got bit, but yeah, I got
Yeah,
bit.
it's pretty cool.
Yeah.
I love superhero games. I recommend them to everybody. I think
Yeah.
they're so cool because you get to play kind of 2 characters. You get you get
Absolutely.
your alter ego and
Yep.
then you get your superhero persona.
Yeah.
And sometimes you don't, but either way, there's complications.
Yep.
It's so interesting to me,
Yeah.
and it takes place in modern times.
Yep.
So everything you know, they know, or
Yeah.
could know, any exploit you can think of, you can. So it's really immediate. It's like I'm going to use my phone, or I'm going to hack a computer, or I'm going to go to the Apple store because
But
they're there.
You're right. The unlock kind of for me was the fact that you can actually play the real person
Mm-hmm.
with the superhero. So it's not just about playing, which I think to me is the difference between stuff like Marvel and DC anyway.
Totally. Peter Parker
yeah.
is so much more interesting than Superman.
Yeah.
Or Clark Kent.
Yeah.
Even though they
100%.
both work for the newspaper.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, lots of games. So we got lots of games this weekend too.
Excellent.
Cool.
Who's next?
Flying Jackalope bought a drink.
Hey, cool. Cheers.
He's one of our
Cheers.
big supporters. Thank you.
Oh.
Character.
No, I was thinking about a shout out. There's a shout out we're supposed to be
Yes.
doing. I don't want to get his name wrong. It was the Obsidian Portal.
Oh, yeah, no. It was, I want to make sure, too,
Yeah,
that I'm
I'm
remembering
reading
it
now,
correctly.
too.
Oh, you're talking about
Da-da-da.
Useless Trivia Man?
Yeah.
Yes.
Useless Trivia Man's campaign.
Who's a big supporter of the show. He's been with us
Yep.
for a long time. He's on the forums as well. And much to his surprise, he got nominated.
Yeah, he won actually the Obsidian
true.
Portal 2016 Campaign of the Year award.
I don't
No
actually want to.
kidding.
I don't want to
Which is
actually like
freaking huge.
undersell it. He actually won.
Yeah,
it.
yeah. No, that's a pretty
Here it
freaking
is.
big deal.
Probably Tim wrote this down.
Yeah.
I'll just read what he said. Hey, so one of our listeners and former regulars, Useless Trivia Man, won the Obsidian Portal 2016 Campaign of the Year award. I think that there's a shout out on the next show. So consider this your shout out. So Useless Trivia Man, who's very active on the forums, everybody should go by and and there's a link there I think on the forums to his little thing. It's I don't want to say little thing. It takes a lot of work to make an Obsidian Portal campaign because
Yeah,
you
it
have to have
does.
links and wikis and everything. It's
Oh, yeah.
and it's cool.
It's like building a wiki from scratch.
It is.
Yeah,
he
no,
does.
that's-
He did.
That's pretty huge because that's
It's huge.
a pretty.
So hey, Useless Trivia
yeah.
Man.
Cheers.
Cheers, man. That's
And
cool.
Cheers to you, Flying Jackalope, because lots of love and the actual plays from Flying Jackalope. So pretty cool.
There's that.
What a
too.
strange label on this beer. It's actually a sticker?
It's a sticker,
Can you peel them off and put them on your car?
probably. I'll bring you a sticker next time. They're delicious.
That must be
though.
like a Pico brewery if they don't have it.
They are a
Those.
new. They used to be a total micro, and now they've got their new, and they've got big, giant stainless steel. I don't know what you call those. I wanted to call them vats,
Okay.
but yeah, they're pretty awesome. Brewery West. Oh
I'm
my-
liking this. I'm liking this. What is it? A saison?
Farmhouse? Is it
Saison?
saison?
A saison.
Yeah.
Saison.
Oh.
So who's next to read?
Okay.
It'll go ahead and reach you.
Okay. Is this your
Your first?
shouldn't be your players first from Chris in Long Beach.
That's an intriguing title. I'm so.
It
There are all
is.
kinds of awkward teenagers going,
Uh-huh.
what?
I so want to make like a fantasy romance novel based with that.
Hey, King of Renfair Stew and his Merry Jacker Court.
They've gotten so good.
They're
at this.
so good.
I know.
Yeah. Here's my jam confessional. Ooh, these are awesome. Yeah. In my late 20s, a close friend of mine came to me and said, "So have you ever played D&D or any RPGs?" I said, "No, I always wanted to though." My friend replied, "Perfect. We should do it and you should GM."
Bogus. That
This-
sucks.
Well,
I know.
well, yeah.
It works for some people. This started
It's like,
me.
it's like, let's do a knock knock joke. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, you start.
Yeah. I got a really good one.
Okay, knock, knock.
Yeah. This started me trying to learn to GM in a vacuum. My friend put together a group and I bought books to read. I listened to podcasts like Happy Jacks. Oh, this isn't even back in the day.
This is recent, yeah.
Yeah, and I watched Will Wheaton play Dragon Age on YouTube. 2 weeks later, I was ready. Or so I thought.
Dun dun dun.
The game started. What did I do? I had them all meet in a tavern, even though they had no idea how to role play. He already knew tropes. That's awesome.
That's right. That's where you
Yep.
always
Yeah.
meet.
It was awkward and awful. First mistake.
Well, look, listen. From real life, anybody you meet in a tavern or a bar or a discotheque or a club, it's going to be awful and awkward.
Yeah, at first times they're awkward anyway.
So, hey, come here more. Okay, hey, so. Yeah.
Next, I assumed we were basically playing a live video game.
Uh-oh.
So what did I do? I put them in one fight after another.
Right.
They said things like, "So I try to hit them," or the paper says I make an attack, or Why do I have to do so much math?
I was told there would be no math in this game.
Yeah.
I was told.
I
We need to find that clip.
Yeah.
I think it's on Fast Times at Ridgemont High. I was told there would be no math.
think so too. I just rewatched that. I, in my great wisdom, dragged this out for 2 more hours. Second mistake. At some point in all the fights, a couple of my players started to try things. I run forward and dive between the spider's legs and attack from behind. And what do?
What do I
Well, actually, there's a well, actually.
do? Yep.
The book doesn't say you can do that. In parentheses, I am such an idiot. Then I remember something in one of the books I read. It said to mix up combat with non-combat encounters.
Ah!
Light bulb, bing.
So they went shopping.
Yeah.
That's what our first non-combat encounters were.
Oh my God.
They'd go back to town and they'd go buy healing potions.
I say to them, so they came across a valley with tree laying across it. How do you get across? I say to them, very proud of my non-combat encounter I thought up on the spot.
Right?
My players proceed to give me option after option. They do everything I now know is thinking outside the box. Again, what do I do? Nope, that won't work.
Wah, wah.
Why did I say this? Because it wasn't how I thought it should be done.
Right, which is underlined, mind you.
Yeah.
Thought it should be done.
We spent an hour in real time at this encounter. An hour trying to walk across a log. Final mistake.
So I haven't actually read this
that's
email,
awesome.
but if this is where it's going, this is what the whole yes and filter is supposed to do.
Yeah.
Right.
You're supposed to, whenever they ask you a question, you run it through that filter first. Yes and.
See, but look at this.
Okay.
There's wind
All right,
coming up.
but there is wind coming up.
Shockingly, my players wanted to try again next week. Gluttons for punishment, I guess. As I thought about the game in hindsight, I saw my mistakes.
Good for you.
Yep.
So that right there says he can learn. You can be trained.
Some of us know that firsts are sometimes painful, but
But I can't tell you how many games I've played for quote experienced GMs that run games like this. They don't know they're doing anything wrong, or they don't know it's not fun.
as I thought about the game in hindsight, I saw my mistakes. I realized all the advice I had heard on podcasts or all the things I had read. I just ignored it because it wasn't what I thought was the only way to do something. I thought of it as my story or my world. I learned that I was really the problem and not my players. So I think my big takeaway from my first game was this. Players and GMs should never learn together. And maybe I should be a better GM.
Can we put that on a T-shirt? Players and GMs should never learn together. Well,
I don't agree with that.
I'm with you.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm in agreement with you.
But let's finish this and then we can parse this.
Chris in Long Beach, Verk on the forums, who is an avid listener of all the actual plays
Long Beach,
as well.
is he a friend of yours? Do you know him? Okay.
I think I may have met him at a con.
For my poor players.
Yep.
PPS, I still GM for most of these guys. We are all much better now, and they actually enjoy playing. I know. You're shocked.
No, I appreciate that. We all appreciate that. Mm-hmm. So go ahead. Say what you were going to say.
I think that it's not horrible to learn together, especially if at the end of the day everybody had as much fun as it took for them to say, I want to play again. Because either these are good friends of yours or they recognize that you guys were learning together, so that even though the process might have been awkward and uncomfortable and painful at times, it was fun enough that they could see that the trajectory was going to be positive and that there was going to be a lot of fun to be had.
Right.
Yeah, so I don't think it's always bad. I mean...
And it's a collaborative thing.
Exactly.
My take on this is, on-the-job training, I think, is much more important than what you can get out of a book. I can read how to weld out of a book. But there's a physicality that I need to learn. There's a muscle memory that you need to learn to weld. That's it. I mean, it's welding. I can read about welding, or I can do welding, and the only way I can learn it is to do it.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah.
And it's even worse when you're dealing with something which is a collaborative effort. because the only way that you can learn to share, the only way that you can learn to build a story together is to do it with other people. Otherwise, you're writing a story in yourself at home on your computer.
Yeah.
And that's great too, but that's a story. That's not a collaborative storytelling, which is what we are pontificating about for years now. Which is, and you can't do that alone, and you have to learn together.
And I think there's a certain amount of value to be had in watching actual plays, and I'm sorry, but like watching people like Will Wheaton play, that's a lot of fun. Or you're going to watch Acquisitions Incorporated, or those are amazing, fun games with a lot of entertaining people who are good at what they do. But that is only going to afford you so much knowledge or learning.
I can watch people weld, but I still don't know how to weld.
I agree.
I can watch people having fun. I can watch people having a game.
Yeah.
I can even watch people acting, but I don't know how to act.
No, I agree 100%. That's why I think that's good research. And obviously, this is somebody who's been listening to the podcast, but I've managed for a long time, and you have to be willing to allow people to make mistakes, because this isn't a very enlightening.
No, that's exactly the
point.
But
it's like people don't know what they don't know until they make mistakes.
Well, here's
because you might think I totally get how to do this.
This is really exciting to me, because as a GM, you're kind of a manager in a way.
Yeah.
What's interesting to me about that statement is, do you know when somebody comes in and they're green as all hell and they overcompensate and they're egotistic or whatever, and you as a manager, what do?
Oh, when they're...
Do you let them fail?
You have to, because I can micromanage the hell out of somebody. But two things. One is no one likes being micromanaged. And the other thing is, once again, they don't know what they don't know. So I can tell you, this is a stupid example, but I actually have an example like this. Like, I could tell you, Stu, can you put these stickers on all these cans? And it's like, I totally think, here's a sticker on a can. You're obviously going to know how to put that sticker. And then I come back and the stickers are like...
And there's bubbles in them.
Yeah, there's bubbles and they're all over the place, and some are upside down.
And
because, and then I can still come up with, okay, next time I'm going to tell the person blah, blah, blah.
As a manager, you're like, all right, next time I will say to center them and make sure that there are no bubbles and that they're all the same.
But sometimes you just don't know how that person's going to interpret what you're telling them. So at the end of the day, people are going to still make mistakes. You can you can train as much as possible. You can give people a lot of support, and they still have to step in and do it themselves to really kind of grok what.
And that's the crux of the biscuit.
Yeah.
Which is, your players are learning, you're learning, but you have to do this together. You can memorize all the rules in the book. It still won't make you a good GM.
How do you think the hobby started?
Right?
Absolutely.
The hobby started with Gygax and Arneson coming up with the basic framework for some rules and sitting down with some friends and running this thing for the very first time.
Yeah.
They didn't know what they were, how it was going to end up. I mean, and how did most of us start? I mean, I played in my buddy's basement. He
awesome.
He bought he got, I think he got it for Christmas or his birthday or something. He got the basic set. He read through it and he kept telling us, "Oh God, we got to come over." Okay, we went over and we played it. I was hooked right off of that, and he had never GM'd before, and he just read through the sample dungeon in the back of the book and just went through and read the text, and we were just enthralled.
As bad as it was, in hindsight, there was something there.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think that...
And I think what it is you're seeing, even if that particular game doesn't go so great, and that game was fine. I mean, I barely even remember it now. It's been so long. It's like 35 years ago or something. But even if it doesn't go great, someone who's going to be predisposed towards role-playing games is going to realize the potential.
Yep.
And go, this could be really freaking awesome if this or that, or you didn't always say no.
Right.
Or whatever.
Well, and I think, I don't know. I think that's very true. And I think that when you stop learning, that could be just, I don't know. It's not harmful, but I love the fact that, how long have you been GMing?
Oh, I started GMing like right after that, so that would have been in 78.
But I can tell, and we don't necessarily have conversations like this about it.
Almost
but
40 years.
Still do stuff where you're molding and going off in different directions and trying new things and
absolutely,
tailoring your style and how you kick off a game, And I just
And
think
he just gets better.
Yeah,
Every game I
exactly.
play with Stu, which
Yep.
they're always exceptional,
Yep.
but he just gets better.
Yep. So I think you always have to, even the most amazing people that I say play for because as a player.
That's well said.
Those people evolve and continue to learn. And they take things away from the table, maybe not to the same degree as when you're first learning, but they still take things away and learn.
Unlike a lot of things, I mean, you can be a musician and you can play music by yourself. You can write poetry and put it in a book and nobody ever sees it.
Sure.
You can take photographs and put them in.
Good point.
The only thing that this is close to is acting.
Yeah.
You can't act in your bedroom because nobody's really seen. Kind of the definition of acting is performing for people. You can be a musician and write music or whatever and just never perform it for people, but you're still a musician, however that term is, and that's a whole different conversation. But in order to do RPGs, you need to do this with other people. It is a social, collaborative effort. You can't do it in a vacuum. And you have to be, and you're gonna make mistakes.
Yep.
And it sounds to me, even though you made terrible mistakes, they're all still with you, and you guys have all improved. And that's the takeaway.
Those are still fun stories.
They are.
Guys, remember the first time we sat
They
down
are.
and we
They
spent
are.
an hour where
They
I wouldn't
are.
let you walk over the log because you couldn't figure out the right way to do it.
Right, and
That's
I'm
awesome.
mining my terrible,
Yeah.
terrible 15-year-old decisions.
Yeah.
And it's true, we do that, but that's how we,
Yeah.
that's the only way that you can improve and learn.
Yeah.
And the other thing I say is that's why you should go to game cons, is to get in other people's games to see how they solve the same
absolutely.
situation.
Yep.
Right. So suddenly there's a log in the gully
Yep.
and they don't get across, and he says, "So what do you do?" And all of a sudden you're like, "Oh my God, I could ask my players what they do and accepted. Oh my God,"
Yep.
or whatever it is. Right. That's a flawed example, but you see.
No, for sure.
You see what they're doing. So you cannot do this in a vacuum.
Yep.
You have to expose yourself to.
Well, and different
You
players.
just have to expose yourself.
Yeah. Different players.
Yeah.
I think sometimes different systems. I mean,
Yeah.
I've referenced this story more than once on the podcast, but that very, very early in my player years, I had only played D&D 4E 4 times, and I went to my first con, and the first game I signed up to play was Burning Wheel. And I had never played RPG before. I played 4E, which is probably
How is Burning Wheel from a player's perspective?
it broke my brain, but I was like little RPG brain that went like this. To your point about like I hadn't, but I like it. It is a different muscle that you exercise, but I remember being so frustrated at the table with kind of just like not understanding how I could
I want to attack the
do
darkness.
because
I'm
it's
sorry,
different. Like you're applying all these mechanics to the social parts and the, there's an argument phase and I'm just like, oh my God,
Everything is parsed down.
The one thing that's the game where you write down what your
Yes.
moves are going to be ahead of time.
yeah,
for
and
combat.
you kind of guess what the opposition is going to write down.
I actually
And
kind of
there's-
like that.
No, I really do now, and I've played.
Can combat take any longer? Oh my God.
Yeah, no, it's-
what is it you're writing here? You dodge?
But it teaches you, because it is pretty fascinating.
Yeah.
It is. Mouse Guard you might like a lot
Right.
too.
I
'cause
bought
it's a
Mouse
little-
Guard. I tried to run it.
Mouse Guard's pretty cool.
It is.
But it's as frustrating as that experience was, and I didn't think I was having fun at the table. I didn't, because I was just like, what? And I was just like we were all making, because I played with a couple friends who were just like giving each other like WTF looks across the table.
Yeah.
But we then spent like literally 3 hours till like 3 a.m. talking about this
Dissecting
game.
it later.
Yeah, and it's like I learned more from being in that uncomfortable, awkward, what I thought was a painful experience.
Very much not D&D.
Yeah, than I had learned
Well-
so far. So it just like,
I've learned more from bad managers who yelled and berated me. And whenever I get in a management position, I'm not going to be that guy.
Yep.
So when you have a
Yep.
bad boss who's in a bad situation, making bad decisions, you learn more from
Yep.
them. It doesn't make
Yep.
doesn't make Burning Wheel a good game. It just means that you learned what not to do
no, and
when
actually
presented with
I
similar
enjoyed
circumstances.
it, but it was just like not what I expected. And, I had one frame of reference, and this was not at
There's
all.
a lot of innovation in that game.
It is.
Maybe
It's
too much.
Pretty.
Well, but it's all broken into chunks, so
Yeah, no, it's
Well,
impressive.
they eventually published one big book of Burning Wheel, didn't they?
Well, there's two books, and then the Burning Codex, and then there's Burning Empires, and Mouse Guard is kind of like...
Burning Empires is... I thought Burning Empires was like a reissue of the whole thing.
No, it's
It
a
isn't?
different...
Really? Oh,
kind of
okay.
a different setting.
Oh,
And,
okay.
and to be fair, I've only read Mouse Guard. I was going to run it for young Emily, who's now
Mouse Guard's
not
pretty
young
awesome.
anymore. It's kind of Burning Wheel light.
It is.
I'm not going to
Yeah.
say it is, but it's kind of Burning Wheel light.
Yeah.
And it was parsed down in kind of... And after I read it, I'm like, I don't like this. No, this is not going to be my daughter's first gaming experience, and threw it out and basically did something else. But, I mean, Mouse Guard is
Yeah.
awesome, but I could savage Mouse Guard to make it much more interesting.
Oh, absolutely. I think it's just an example that when you expose yourself to doing different things, or like you said, going to a con, playing with different people, playing
Right.
under different,
Well,
with different
yes.
GMs,
Yes.
like you learn a lot. That was when I decided I love playing more than I love GMing. But when I finally was like, I really want to GM, is not because my friend Joe was doing a bad job. I thought he was a great GM, but I found myself going, oh, I want to do this, or I would have done that, or what do you? Not because those were bad choices, but I found myself saying, I want to be in that driver's seat so that I can.
And sometimes there's a story
Make
you
those
want to...
narratives-
There's a thing
yeah.
you want to do. Freak Show came out of
Yeah.
me wanting to do kind of an X-Men kind of game.
Yeah.
With some, and it kind
Yeah.
of came, and I'm like, I want to just explore this. I don't know how to do, but I found, and I talked to Dave. I'm like, can you keep me honest? I want to try
Yeah.
this. But really, it came upon me. I don't want to tell a story per se, but I found the characters really interesting, and I think that was the interesting hook for especially for a con game, which is
Oh, yeah.
really cool characters, and then
Yep.
you create like a cool little framework that they go
Yep.
and play in. I was hooked on the characters myself. I'm like I could do a thing with this.
Yeah.
Whatever it is to get you jamming.
Yep.
That's the impetus. That's the
No, I
story.
think that's cool too. So I applaud Verk.
Mm-hmm.
I applaud the GM confession.
Mm-hmm.
But obviously there was something good going on there too, because your folks wanted to play again.
Yep.
And that's cool.
It did have a happy ending. I love.
Yeah.
I love
it's
horror
like-
stories with a happy ending.
It's like Verk from... God, what is that character? Was it in Best in Show? What's his name? Fred Willard. His character in Best of Show.
Right.
Had been on a couple of sitcoms. And he had catchphrases.
Oh.
I have to do my work. Remember? No? That's a long way
But
for
he had the
nothing.
same. Well, he had the same character in
Well, it's Fred
Mighty
Willard.
Wind.
It's Fred Willard.
Which is like
Maybe
because
it was
he's
Mighty
like
Wind. It
he's
was
Mighty
Mighty
Wind,
Wind.
where he's like, hey.
I don't think so.
I think that would be great. Or what's happening? Or whatever it is. Yeah,
I have to do my work.
Yeah, the catchphrases.
Right.
Because he was
I
a child
don't
actor.
think so.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Fred Willard he died recently, didn't he?
No, really? No.
I thought Fred Willard
Is he,
died.
isn't he?
Well, he's so dry.
Yeah,
he
you gotta look
probably
that up.
died, and we didn't notice him. We thought it was
I
a
think
joke.
he died.
No.
He was also in Wall-E. Wow.
Oh, I guess not. No,
Okay.
I'm sorry.
He just hasn't worked in a while, so you thought he's dead.
Well, they
No,
haven't.
wasn't he in like Pitch Perfect or? Am I
Yeah,
thinking
he's
of
in
something
Who am I
everything.
thinking
Yeah.
of that died
Works
that's kind of like him?
all the time.
I don't know. Fred Gwynn finally.
No, it's not Fred Gwynn.
I'll think about this.
You. Oh.
What
Did you say Utes?
That show is.
That's why
That's
I'm.
an awesome
And you know what? I played that for Emily a couple of years ago, and she was hooked. She completely bought it.
yeah.
And we played it for
That's a
Jessie.
fantastic
Jesse's
movie.
like, I have no idea that this movie existed.
Are you kidding?
Well,
It's that. It's
well,
that old.
It's that old, yes. And it's kind of
it's the
it kind of
90s.
went under the radar for a lot of people. People didn't, and
It was
because
such a funny film.
if you go watch it
It's
again,
an
it's
excellent
genius.
film.
And she
Yeah.
won an Oscar for it, and I
Yep.
watched that performance, and it is Oscar worthy.
I think so too.
She nails it.
Yeah.
So for those of you haters out there, stop
Yeah.
it. Go watch that movie again with fresh eyes. She
I do.
nails it.
That whole thing with the.
My
biological clock is
Well, and that whole scene where she's pissed off at him when
Yeah.
she's in the
in the courtroom.
Yeah, and then she's like, he shows her the and
Permission to treat the witness
she's-
as hostile.
You think I'm hostile now? It's like
The scene that
she's so awesome.
because my daughter wanted to do an accent stuff, and I'm like, you should watch this movie and
Oh,
do a
yeah.
New York accent. And there's a scene that, supposing you put your little dough, supposing you're a little dough and you're prancing through the woods, and you see a brook, a clear, still clear water, and you put your little dough lips down and you're taking a drink, and bam, somebody shoots you, your brains all over the grass, and I ask you, are you going to care what that SOB is wearing? Although there's a lot more swearing in that, which is why when she presented it to her drummer person who went, I don't think that's appropriate.
Yeah.
Not for the class, but he didn't want to get flack from the parents. But anyway, the point being, it's genius.
That movie is excellent. Who's the guy that plays the prosecutor? Because
Greg
he's
Gwynn.
really good.
No,
Greg Gwynn
yeah,
is the judge.
Trotter. Mr.
He's
Trotter.
really
Yes.
good too. Yeah. But
The
Pesci
exact
and
same time. It really holds up.
It does.
And you know what it is? It's a riff on Anatomy of a Murder, which is a Jimmy Stewart movie.
Right.
And it's a great movie. And it actually...
Is it really?
Anatomy of a... Well, they're not copying it, but it's a riff on that whole
Okay.
courtroom drama thing.
It's like how
Anatomy of a-
Ishtar is a road film.
Right.
Okay.
And Anatomy of a Murder kind of started the whole courtroom drama thing because, and I saw interviews years ago, they were like, how are you going to make a court interesting, right? And they did. You're riveted. You're watching basically a courtroom drama. And without that, there would be no Perry Mason. There'd be no A Few Good Men.
That's really
There'd
interesting.
be no, and Anatomy of Murder was kind of the first, 12 Angry Men, was kind
I
of
was
the
gonna say
first
12 Angry Men is what I think
real, yeah, but Anatomy of Murder really elevated it. It really took it to a different level. And
What's the Claire Starrow? Is that Inherit the Wind?
it could be.
Yeah, that's the other one I think of. That's like, but that's really awesome.
It is. Way more geeky than...
Hey, Gina, have you played Torchbearer?
I have.
Okay, well, they're asking in the chat room about Torchbearer, and someone said, well, Jim said, the person who could answer that is off the top of her head is on mic. They're saying that might be a simplified version of Burning Wheel?
I think so too.
Okay.
So it has, because it doesn't have those same, but Mouse Guard does, that same mechanic where you're, when you, like the argument phase.
Right.
But it has some of the a lot of the same flavor as Burning Wheel.
The thing
So,
that
yeah.
struck me about Mouse Guard
And
is that you didn't deal with a lot of that until you got back to home base. Like once you crossed through the gate to home base, then all this other stuff happened. It was sort of weird. It was
Well,
like...
and then the XP from failing,
Yes.
and that's how you learn.
Everything gets adjudicated.
Torchbearer is
and-
pretty awesome. In fact, Sean Nittner, who I know you enjoy too because you like Narrative Control, his podcast.
Oh, yeah.
He wrote an adventure that they are kickstarting right now called Stone. Oh, I'm horrible. It's like Stone Edge Mountain for Torchbearer. And Torchbearer is awesome. Torchbearer is like, I'm trying to think of what Luke Crane says.
Well, you got a lot of windows on your phone. Holy metric.
I know. Well,
Didn't you ever hear of folders?
no, here's what, I don't like how they look.
All right.
They are aesthetically ugly. I just you can ask people, I'm always like, why don't they let me put color on it? And then it just has a letter, so I know this is social media. Like, I don't want to see all these little tiny dots inside my little app
You
thing.
put your little dough lips down to...
Down to the
Brook.
river,
Crystal
down to the
clear
brook. Yeah.
Tom says Torchbearer. He
Yeah.
says Adam Cobell quoted. He's quoting Adam Cobell. Torchbearer, the Vietnam of dungeon crawls.
Here's what I was going to say is what Luke Crane says.
That's another
is that
T-shirt.
Torchbearer, I'm paraphrasing. Torchbearer is their love letter to D&D's encumbrance system.
Nice. Well
So-
said. Well
There
said.
is a lot of
Carrying
Yeah.
and
It's-
weight
So it's
management.
the resource management.
oh my
game.
god, yeah. But it was
Ugh.
it's a lot of fun, but it's a different kind of game.
Right.
I remember playing
And you have to take,
EverQuest. and-
like you do stuff when you take rest breaks, and you can only do it then. And but it was a lot. It's a lot of fun. It's different kind of a game though, but it's a lot of fun.
All right.
Resource management.
Yeah.
Powered by the apocalypse.
You want to try that again?
Powered by the apocalypse.
Apocalypse.
Falling damage.
A couple
from
lips.
Stephen S.W. Jackers. Steve here to talk to you about Powered by the Apocalypse, since a good portion of you seem to be ignorant about how it works. By a good portion of you, you mean Stork.
Right,
Because Stork is the one who says things that need to be corrected. If I don't know about something, I say, I don't know.
Yeah.
But Stork will just go off about it.
It's
I keep getting smacked with this on the forum. It's like, you guys said,
yeah.
when did I say that? Well, it was Stork.
Here's the funny thing. Here's
Every
the funny
time.
thing to me. This is totally a tangent. Is I don't know if this is girl voice, or if it's because, but I will actually be on mic and say that is actually not correct, XYZ, and people will still say
That-
no one has corrected blah blah blah, and I'm like,
That's because I don't know if that's girl voice. I think that's because they're still raging over what was said.
Right.
Yeah.
That they just, it's like we're not leaving. Whenever Stork says something about a game that he hasn't played,
Yeah.
there should be a gap.
Yeah.
oh,
A
like,
rage gap.
Pause.
Yes.
But my clever plan is working because it drives the forums.
Yes,
no,
it does.
absolutely. No, I think, and honestly, it's what we love.
It's funny when I
I get accused of saying all kinds of things on the forum, and I'm like, when did I say that? And I go back and listen. Oh, it was Stork.
And to be fair, there's so many flavors of Powered by the Apocalypse,
Yeah.
and people have misinterpreted it. I played a couple of games, and each one of them was radically different.
Well, that is definitely true.
Well, setting drives
And
the
honestly,
mechanics.
But
I've
more than
said-
that, the mechanics.
I've said this before, and I'm not going to point fingers because different people like different things, but there are absolutely flavors of Powered by the Apocalypse that I think are bad games. They are not all created equally.
Sure.
And it depends on what you like.
There's a boom going on right now that's a much smaller
Yep.
version of the D20
Yep.
open OGL boom.
Yes.
Yep.
It's way smaller,
Oh.
but everyone's doing. It's like, oh,
Remember, Savage Worlds was huge for a while.
Yeah.
right. Well,
And
Savage
now-
Worlds didn't have an open gaming license.
No.
though.
No,
So
no.
it didn't have
Right.
this weird boom thing.
Well, but
Yeah.
when we started this, Savage Worlds was like on the horizon.
It was
and
the
then
new-
it's huge.
It was the new hotness for
Everybody-
a long time.
Yeah.
Yep.
Well, and part of that is.
And then it was Fate.
Yeah.
Yes. And now it's PBA.
Yeah.
Well, and it has been for a while, I think. I
It'll
just
be
think
something else eventually.
It will be. Yeah. It will be. And it's Stone Dragon Mountain. Sorry, I think I said Stone Edge, which is what my Pokemon's fight thing is. Sorry. I've been playing a lot of Pokemon. It's Stone Dragon Mountain, and you should totally back it because it looks amazing.
Proby Tim recently asked how to determine if a fall would be lethal in Powered by the Apocalypse, so I'm writing in to address the question that should have been asked instead of what good is a number to you. Instead, what good it should have been asked instead. What good is a number to you? When the GM designs an encounter or an area, he will likely determine heights so that the damage of the fall matches what exists in his mind. 100 feet would be lethal, and I want this fall to be a lethal fall, so it's 100 feet. The GM then describes the cliff as 100 feet tall. The player, if they are familiar with the system, can then determine how lethal said fall is. Why? Just tell them that it's a lethal fall. How high is it? High. 10d6 damage, if you must know. The same thing occurs in V20 games with suspect for aura reading.
Right.
The
Gives
G-
the whole
okay.
extrapolation of armor class. Yeah.
The GM has to figure out the mood and translate that to a color. The player then takes that color and translate it back into an emotion. Oh yeah, exactly. That's
I don't know. It's not making sense to me.
it's not celerity. It's what's it called? What's the name of that goddamn
Dexterity.
Oh, not obfuscate.
Auspex?
Auspex.
It's the
Okay.
yeah. The player then takes that color and translates it back into an emotion. Dear God, why are we doing this? Just tell your player the deep red aura with flecks of silver tells you that he's a horny werewolf. I don't know. I'm making that shit up. Give me a break here. That's true. The thing is, though, I may have a perception of what this person is feeling. So I go through the book and I look and I'm saying, okay, those are the closest colors to it. Then she sees those colors and she's going to translate them more. So it's not, rather than saying he's feeling this and that,
You actually want something lost in translation.
a little bit.
You actually kind of want that interpretation from the player because it gives you more wiggle room and it gives them a margin of error,
And yeah, there's some vagueness, a little bit of
as
vagueness.
there should be.
Yeah.
Anyway,
Well, I mean, depending on how well they roll, there should be vagueness in that.
Powered by the Apocalypse is not a game of numbers. It's a conversation.
Yes, it is.
That conversation starts with description. How tall is the cliff? Tall. Why do you ask? I'm trying to figure out if I jump, what will happen. You might bust an ankle or a leg. Hard to say for sure. It depends how you land. Traditional games train players and GMs to play footsie with each other. It's taboo to simply ask if a fall would be lethal. Instead, the player and GM do an intricate nerd dance where they pass the information in code if they are both nerdy enough. PTBA gets rid of the bullshit and lets the player ask what they really mean and obliges the GM to answer them. We're not here to trick you. That the stakes are always yours for the knowing.
Yep.
P.S. Movement isn't something that is quantified and powered by the apocalypse, so a height isn't useful for that either. The only thing it would be useful for is comparing heights, such as between a wall and a siege tower. Again, though, it would simply be easier to tell them said siege tower is a man's height short of the walls. The actual math is just a distraction from the game at large. So you're not allowed to use numbers and powered by the apocalypse. There you go.
Is that the takeaway you got from that?
That's my takeaway from that.
It's
So
not-
when
it's
you
not the total
complain
takeaway.
next time,
Stork said it.
No, I think the takeaway is that it's a fiction first
Yeah.
conversation.
It's conversation.
That uses moves to determine
Right.
hits, misses.
that cleared it up. What?
It's a conversation first.
Okay.
Yes.
So it's the conversation about setting up the narrative. And then you use moves, which you get either on your playbook or basic moves from the game, to determine where the fiction goes from there. Is there a miss? Is there a hit? Is there a hard move? That sort of thing.
So in my moves, I can tell you what I want to have happen?
Yes. And then you say, I think this is what.
I want to kick him so hard that he falls off the building.
Yeah. And then I say, well, maybe that's okay. And I go, yeah. So.
How high is that building? Is it enough to kill him?
Building's pretty high. So.
But you
it is
can't
likely,
specify how many stories it is.
No, I guess.
You could probably say it's a 10-story building.
It's a 10-story building.
You can totally say, but it's not about saying 10d6 damage. So the example he's
Everything
using,
is in words, not numbers.
So
for the most part,
generally
yeah,
speaking.
yeah,
Generally
exactly.
So I
it's
don't
like,
actually know if he's died or not. So now I have to go down and find out.
No, it's like if you kicked butt on your roll and you hit, he's probably going to die on the bottom. If I fictionally set up the fact that it's like a 10-story building, or like in his example, it's like
Or if you were to say the Empire State Building.
Yeah.
Which, in
Yeah.
the narrative,
Yeah.
has its own height already.
yeah.
Because that would certainly happen too.
Or I want to jump across.
So we're on a building, right? How high is the building? I don't know what building you're on. We're on the Empire State Building.
Yeah, no, it's
it
not
is now
so-
happened.
Yeah, it's okay to contribute to the narrative and the fiction so that you understand your fictional positioning, and then that it's a conversation. Do you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
it's
but
like,
I'm going to exploit it. Every battle is going to be in the Empire State Building.
Well,
and
no,
every
you-
villain I'm going to kick off
that's
of
not
them.
always going to be, well, especially like I'm
Oh,
going to
yeah,
fight
watch me.
hill giants in the, on the plains of the, so there's the Empire State
watch
Building.
Watch me.
Tone.
Okay, so we're on the plains, right? Can I say this is geologically active and there's a rift that's right that we're fighting on the edge of? I'm going to kick him into that rift.
If that fit our scenario, yeah.
Because that's the thing about Power of the Apocalypse is that I'm just gonna exploit the hell out of it.
Okay, Forrest has a little Powered by the Apocalypse tirade here on the
Oh, cool.
chat room.
Oh, she's a Traveler fan. Go for it.
And of course, you can tell it starts with "Look." Powered by the Apocalypse is a Suzuki car. Like Suzukis? Cool. Drive the car. Don't like or understand how a motorcycle company can make a car? Drive a goddamn Ford. We're done here.
Forrest, I don't think Suzuki's made a car in like 10 years, but you rock.
Maybe they do in Canada.
No, and it's true, and I think we've talked about this before on the podcast, is that people can also not like what they don't like what they like.
Sure.
I have a friend, Rob, from Useless Drivel, Monkey in the Cage, that is not a huge fan of PBTA. He doesn't like that sort of, he feels like it's nebulous.
There's one resolution mechanic for everything.
Yeah. And then he, in Dungeon World, if you're I want to make a perception check, it's discern realities. But then there's a list of questions depending on if you hit strongly or you hit in the middle that you get to ask. And he's like, those questions never ask what I really want to know. You know, and some of us are like, no, I'm totally cool with that because I'll figure out how to frame the question I want. And some people are like, yeah, I don't like that. And that's totally okay.
Sure.
It's totally okay.
I'm not. Well, we are judging because that's kind of the thing about this is trying to show the difference between systems, and so we have to judge. But you're right. I'm not going to hate on people that love Power of the Apocalypse. I'm not, and I find the games that I've played, they're all radically different, and the rules have changed from game to game. So how am I supposed to know? Sometimes this happens, sometimes that happens, but I do know it's narratively controlled. I do know that whatever I say, the GM honors, sometimes to a fault.
Not always though, but yeah, it depends on sometimes who you play with too.
That's what I'm saying, but but it is every game I've played, it seems like a different game. Now, that's nobody's fault, but I have played in, I'm going to say, half a dozen Power of the Apocalypse games, and including Jibs. And Jibs was a lot of fun, but it was different than the one that I played before.
Absolutely.
And not because of the topic, but the rules and the way they were interpreted were different. And I think that that's the flaw for me about Power by the Apocalypse, is it is really open-ended to it and really open to interpretation. And that's cool, but it's not always, I mean, I kind of want a randomizer. I kind of want to be able to fail, other than
You got one.
You can fail.
You got
yes, occasionally.
And that was the last
2d6. And
Yeah.
the same randomizer as Traveler.
6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
I get
fail.
it. I get it, but I'm still able to manipulate that fail into a win.
No.
No.
Well, I've done it.
It depends. That's
because you're a charming motherfucker.
Maybe.
Not necessarily, but you should fail on that. Someone might say, yeah, that guy falls over. But the hard move that person's going to make on you for that fail is something that they're going to do something different with. Most of the time, somebody's going to be like, yeah, that doesn't happen. And what's possible is you went off that building. Like, that's the fail. So it might depend on who you're playing, or they might say, and because that's a miss. That's a miss.
I know. It's supposed to be. But a miss doesn't really count, because you're like, well, next turn I'm falling down a building. I'm going to do a catch. And I'm going to catch myself on the flag.
No, you're going to
swing myself back up to the top of the building, and I want to hit the villain on my way up.
that fail that you made.
Well, yeah, that's fine. But you did. I'm falling. I've still got how many seconds before I fall? Well, heights don't really matter, but I've still got I've still got a turn before I hit the pavement to rescue myself.
Well, and I think that's sometimes. That's the I don't know how I want to phrase this.
Well, and here's what I would do. I would catch the flag, I would pull it, I would bounce back up, and I would land back up on the top of the building ready to fight again. No. Or, well, that's what I would say. It's Power by the Apocalypse. Let's roll some dice.
Then you've not played you've played with...
So, it's a miss. I'm falling, but I haven't hit the pavement yet. You're going to give me a round to fall through the air?
Not necessarily.
You have to hit the pavement?
Oh, yeah, it's like if narratively it makes more sense for I've died in those games. I've failed my dice rolls to the point where it's like, the hard move that is the right move to make is that your character dies. Like, that has absolutely happened to me in PBTA games. I think it just depends narratively on what kind of game you're playing. And I think sometimes I don't know if I want to say the word trouble, but is that Vincent Baker, who is the designer of Apocalypse World, is very okay with people using that mechanic. So there's a lot of PBTA mechanic out there in a lot of different games, but not necessarily all the games are really, so it's almost are really the same spirit of that game, because really if you're kind of following the tenets of what he set up as a Powered by game, like where it's a conversation first that you and I are having, and that the moves kind of trigger the resolution, then it's a PBTA game. But there are so many other...
I thought the conversation triggers the moves.
The conversation does trigger the moves.
Okay.
Sorry if I said that wrong. Yeah. But I'm just like... And then a part of that does involve that 2d6, and the 10 and above is a strong hit, and the 7 and 9 is, a hit with consequences. But there are actually games now that are PBTA, or maybe more appropriately, Apocalypse Engine games, because they are more like the spirit of what the Apocalypse Engine is supposed to be about versus the actual just 100% mechanical pieces. So you're right. There are just so many flavors of that.
So would it be fair to say that if you played a couple of Powered by the Apocalypse games, you could still be wrong?
Yeah. Because I do think it depends.
So stop rate. Well, no, because we need to drive more forum stuff. Yeah,
no,
keep hating on me.
that's okay, because I think we
Say some more wrong shit.
Yeah,
Right now.
I will.
To be quite honest, we are all sassy and disparaging about the things we don't like.
Oh, sure.
So it's not even that you don't like them, but it's not necessarily
And it's not even that I
your
don't
biggest.
understand.
Yeah.
It's not even that I don't understand it. Yes,
So we get
a lot
a
of times I
little
speak in hyperbole, and a lot of times I speak in
Exactly.
exaggerations. I get what Powered by the Apocalypse is trying to do. I kind of have a problem with the mechanic
Yeah.
of making me fail. It's not quite right. It's not. I'm trying to put words to what the mechanic is. I kind of have a problem with it. It kind of sticks in my craw. I still just prefer storking up my dice. I fail enough. I don't actually, and then the way I play, I tend to just choose to fail anyway. And I get what Powered by the Apocalypse is trying to do, which is force more people to make it. Excuse me, there is a fly. There's a fruit fly that's buzzing around.
there is. Sorry,
and we've all been smacking
we're
at
like
it.
crazy
the
people.
problem is
There's
there's
one.
food. Someone put food in my
Yeah.
trash can.
And it wasn't empty. But anyway, there's a fruit fly. So if we just are smacking like we have been, and I almost did,
It's not Tourette's.
it's not Tourette's. Although that's my favorite disease, and I don't want to make light of anybody that has Tourette's, but I really I'm
to
gonna
him,
pretend.
not me.
I'm gonna pretend when I'm 80, if I make it to the 80, to have Tourette's,
No.
just so I can swear at kids.
This
Get
was
off my lawn and I can swear.
my fantasy, sort of, for real, was work-related stress-induced Tourette's, where you would have to accommodate me for saying all the worst
Yes!
things ever
How-
at work, because it's like,
That's exactly what I want to have happen. I just
Yeah.
want to say it.
yeah, and it's
I
like
have Tourette's.
either that.
It's
or-
work-related
yeah.
stress for Tourette's, but it's
Yeah.
Tourette's.
Work-related stress Tourette's.
Yeah, exactly.
All right.
Okay.
That was,
RPG
that was good though.
Yeah, it was.
Here's a very long email from Kenigma.
Oh, it's my turn, isn't it?
No, it's
'Cause
mine. I haven't read yet.
Yeah, I don't think you did.
Didn't I? Oh, no, I did. I read one.
you?
We should split this up because it's like 4 pages long.
Okay.
Work has kept me off the forums, Twitch, and other emails. Being a super rich and a hot secret agent who is also an astronaut just keeps me so busy.
That's
But
super awesome.
I find myself with a little time between missions. Let me have my delusions. As of this year, I have been role-play GMing, or RPR GMing, for 35 years. Holy shit, I'm old.
Yeah, next year I will have been playing role-playing games for 40 years. 78.
Really?
78, yes.
Yay.
And in that amount of time, you end up with some crazy stories and lots of lessons learned. I thought I'd share some of my more colorful experiences and how I handled them. They're like mini horror stories. Maybe the Happy Jack's Brain Trust is a better solution than what I came up with, or came up with. Well,
Longest ever.
handling big groups.
Is it 5 pages?
It's got bullets. It's got bullet points.
I
It
like
has
it.
bullet
One.
points.
I just like that.
Which
for-
actually
I'm
reduces
gonna-
the page.
Stop interrupting me. I'm going to do this fast. Handling big groups, which is awesome. Handling.
5 pages.
Once upon a time, I bought a new game that wasn't GURPS. The shame. And sent out the customary, here's what the game we're playing wants in. I got 12 interested people. My first thought was, how exciting.
Oh, no.
Immediately after, I thought, what the fuck do I do with 12 eager players? My solution. For the point
Lottery.
at first, I centralized the group in one town. The setting is post-apocalyptic survival, with the players being a band of mercs that run missions and always end up back at their home base. Good solution. 2, the bullet point the second. The games to run every 2 weeks-ish, and invites are sent 2 games in advance. The first 6 to confirm were in.
Oh.
Anyone who wanted
Okay.
to play and didn't make the
Yeah.
cut had the right to refusal for the first game we played.
That's like how I was running the Infinite Worlds game.
It's-
It's like you go on a team, each mission is
Yeah.
one thing. And,
Totally
and
perfect.
also Ashes of Exodus.
And oddly
Oh,
enough,
cool.
Infinite Worlds was GURPS.
GURPS, yes.
Yeah.
It worked out really well. My players at the time
It's a
were
little constipated, yeah.
late 20s to 40s.
Okay.
Blowjob.
I'm looking for some voiceover work if anybody wants to hire me.
That's so funny.
My players at the time were from the late 20s to 40s, almost all work and have adult stuffs. So the ability to not be obligated to play worked really well for everyone. One of the fun outcomes, the bullet point
Yeah.
the second, one of the fun outcomes was that one game we got 5 players. Then the next one I'd get 5 different players, maybe 1 or 2 from before, but the jobs they ran affected the reputation and holdings from the whole group. Yeah, it was like Mission Impossible. So you may play 1 month and come back, and the next would be like, why don't we have any money? And why do these people hate us? Or why is everything on fire? It made for some really fun role-playing and inter-party conflict.
Cool.
The second topic, handling unruly players. So, yeah, we've all had those, right? Well, this one time, in band camp, we played a game that had political and social elements with different societies, and the conflicts came from different entities interacting. The players had to deal with them, each by picking a side, and just navigating the various personalities to achieve their goals. So, without getting into the details, a couple of players' real-life politics didn't line up with the game's not real-world policies. They felt like being very vocal over what was the correct political/social way things should happen. They stayed up game time, and patience wasn't constructive and generally was irritating to everyone. We all played games to blow off steam, not to fight with friends, so I wanted to put this down quickly. Bullet point the first. My first attempt to settle the situation was to ask all the players to keep their personal politics out of the game. Simple, right? Fair, right? Fail. Players just went right back to it at every opportunity. Next was simply to ban political conversation from the table and remove the more political aspects from the game so there wasn't anything to set people off. Fail. Same players just find something to pick at and off they went. Frustrated with the soft touch, I finally spoke to each of the players separately and said if they couldn't control themselves at the table, they weren't welcome at the table.
Bam.
Perhaps
Yeah.
drastic, but I had other players at this point
Get foe.
didn't want
Yeah.
to play if those players came to the game, and I really draw the line when you destroy other people's fun. It is inconsiderate and
Nice
selfish.
job.
I wasn't happy with how this played out, and I would have liked to have had more diplomatic solution than a threat, but I was at my wit's end. And quite frankly, after weeks of rhetoric, I and the other players were just really over it. We're really just over it. The gaming table, at least mine, wasn't a place for this, and I just want to kill shit and take stuff.
You want me to
Yes, handle it from there.
Hand over?
Hand up.
Okay.
Wrestling.
Tag.
All right. Handling no-shows. Look, I'm not a monster. Shit happens.
But you are.
Life happens. This is just a game. I get it. But to commit to something that then not show or to cancel last minute is just inconsiderate. After years of flaky players, I've hit upon a formula. 1, if the reason is legit, then I ask that in the future they give a heads up. Now, I'm assuming this is people who just don't show.
Yeah.
Which I don't understand.
That is like the height of flakiness.
That
Totally.
happens.
I mean,
It's
Yeah.
flaky to say, oh, I'm not going to be able to make it because I've got opera tickets. Or
dude,
Yeah.
we live in California, the focal point of flaky people. And even here, they're like, you know, people don't just not show up. They may say hours before the game, oh man, I flaked, I just woke up, or whatever, but at least they tell you.
if people don't, I assume they're in prison.
Or dead on the road.
And I'm not their
Yeah.
first phone call, which I totally understand.
Yes.
I don't know, man. If I'm in prison and I have a game, I'm calling you
Call the
first.
GM
And then
first.
my tagline will be, man, I can't make the game, but can you call a lawyer for me?
Because if you're in jail, your wife's not talking to you.
Nope.
In the future, they give a heads up. We tend to play every 2 to 3 weeks, so I ask for a week in advance if at all possible. If it happens again with little or no warning, reiterate the above. If the problem continues, then I just place a gun to their head. No, then I just place them in a reduced role where the character is not part of the main story. That's fair, I think.
Punishment.
Well, yeah, but it's fair. I mean, I had games where I had planned, okay, we're going to go visit this character's homeland, and that character doesn't show up.
Yep.
And it's like, what do I do now? So, I still want to see my friend, and I still want them to play, but I also don't want them to hold up the story everyone else is participating in. If after all of that, it still doesn't work, then they just fall off the invitee list. Mm-hmm. If a player asks, then I have a conversation about why they aren't in the game anymore, and if they can work something out, we do. This all assumes they aren't legit reasons that can be worked around. If they are, then I work out something with the player to allow the troubled player to play. Typically, the group is more than willing to make allowances. Allowances must be made. I've seldom had to do much past step 1 or 2 with anyone, but there wouldn't be a step 3 or 4 if I hadn't had a couple of them.
In this modern day, everybody's life is really busy. We're experiencing it ourselves with the Moat game. People aren't able to commit, or they commit, but they're like, I've stuff happened.
Jesse's the wives are doing a couple little mini tours.
And Jason missed a game, and then we were able to work it out with him. He was in Baltimore in a hotel room. We were able to Skype him in.
2 blocks away from Bertha's Muscles.
Yep.
From Bertha.
Which is sort of apparently.
Yeah, but still.
Because
when you're ashore in
Baltimore
Baltimore
and you fancy a bite to eat, just follow your nose to Bertha's. You're in for a rare old treat.
How do you know that?
Because we're folk singers.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Oh, that's like
a
a legendary song that was written in the 1970s.
Yeah.
And it's about Bertha's Bar and Grill or whatever it's called in Baltimore.
Yeah.
And there's a big sign there that says "Eat Bertha's Mussels." So
Eat Bertha's
Tony
mussels.
Barand and I don't remember who the other guy was wrote the song for him called
You can
Bertha's
eat them
Mussels.
in the dining room. You can eat them in the bar.
In the bar.
So when you were ashore at Baltimore, that was where I picked
I
it.
miss Celtic Skull, by the way.
Yeah, it might one day be back. Who knows?
Anyway, yes, carrying on.
Handling snipping.
Snipping or sniping?
Passive aggressives.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
I don't typically catch on to these behaviors at first because I just don't expect people to behave this way, but sometimes they do.
Well, I guess apparently you haven't gamed with enough people that hold grudges, but that's not necessarily your fault. It might be, somebody else's.
We don't blame you for your ignorance. I try to err on
I was being passive aggressive, by the way.
Yeah.
Did I good?
So
Did I do good? Was it?
It was
Okay.
good.
Very good.
I saw what you did there.
I tried to err. It was all right. I mean, it's a good first effort.
Yeah.
I try to err on the side of caution because some gamers aren't always good at the social. I threw up in my mouth a little bit because
we say
that's going to be like parent adulting.
I know, and we say it's a stereotype, but he had it in quotes, so.
And so they come off as trolly when they don't mean to.
Yeah.
How do you tell? I wish I had a good answer for that. Here are some examples of my experiences.
Oh, good.
This is gonna
Once
be
upon
fun.
a time, I got an email list of rules problems from a player that were never discussed during the game.
Nice.
That's not passive aggressive.
Wow.
That's awesome. There's a bunch of rules that you didn't do in the game that I want you to know.
Or it may be like, well, let's just do it this way, and then we'll address it later, right? Because I do that all the time. Welcome to doing actual plays.
Oh, yeah, right? It's called a forum.
That just kills me. I can imagine jamming a game. There's a bunch
Holy
of
crap.
rules that I haven't even done. It's like, here are the grapple rules, just in case.
Getting a multi-page rambling
Wow.
email of problems just isn't constructive. But I addressed the concerns before the next game. Note the issues centered mainly on the player wanting to play an entirely different game, have more spotlight, be the main character, and so on.
I bet he would be adverse to having his backstory mind as well.
I asked the player to either bring issues up
Like
during
a
the
double
game
entendre.
or after, so we could discuss and handle any issues that as they happened, or at the end of the night in the future. I got a new list after the game, even more rambling than the other, and it was very aggressive.
Well, actually.
I then realized
That's
the player was
unnecessary.
upset because the
no.
game wasn't going their way.
Yep. They're
Then
out
there are players who give non-construct. Now, I should say, one of your things as a GM, you're a performer when you're a GM, and one of the things you're supposed to do is scratch the itches that the players have. And if players are looking for certain things and stuff, isn't that kind of part of our responsibility as GMs?
No,
I mean, not always.
No, I think it is too, but I suppose it could depend on the degree to which this person wanted to be the...
Right.
Because we've all played with those people that want to be all the things.
Sure.
All the
and
time.
in all the places, all the time.
I have that skill. I can do that.
Yeah.
I can do that too.
I wanted to
make that
go
real
do
quick?
this thing, but then this player that wasn't going to do that thing wants to do this other thing that sounds kind of cool, so I'm
going to do that too.
Yeah. I'm there. I left.
Oh my
I
God!
left
Why are you letting the
and
rogue pick this lock? I can do this so
Yeah.
much better. I actually
Yeah.
have a skill on this. I can't believe
Yeah.
you're letting. Why?
But I mean, and there are player types that are incompatible.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I get that.
And
I know that.
So,
Yep.
and at that point, don't put up with them.
Sure.
And then I realized the player was upset because the game wasn't going their way. Then there are players who give non-constructive complaints during the game. I'm not talking about rules questions or, oh, hey, that wasn't what I meant / understood, but some unreal stuff.
Oh, this is my purview. I'm
Here
really
are
good at this. Oh,
here
yeah.
are some
I'm great at
examples.
this.
I don't like the dice we use to play, 2 10-sided. I think we should use different dice.
Yeah, I've done that. Yeah.
Me. Well, I can't do much about that. The whole system is based off of 2 D10s.
Well, you're the GM. Just fix it.
I want to play GURPS and not this. Yeah! Me. Well, we agreed to play the system. Maybe once we finish the first arc, we can vote on playing a different system.
Bogus. Fuck this. I'm going to roll my 10s, man.
These complaints came after agreeing to play the system, and in the middle of the game, often after something did not go the player's way. Or the always popular player who wants an undo button, or just to bitch. After a scene had played out, and as I'm setting up the next scene, he says, "Hey, you didn't let me do thing," or "You did rule wrong," etc. Me, okay, why didn't you bring that up when it happened? You didn't give me a chance, so I'm bringing it up now. Okay, let's just retcon. No, it's done now. I don't want to go back.
Huff.
Huff. I mean, that's the parenthetical huff.
Yeah.
No, it's just done now. I
No,
don't want
it's
to go
just done now.
back.
I don't want to go back.
In all cases, why did this guy keep playing? I'm sorry. No, I've had a lot of this stuff too. I was this guy sometimes. In all cases, the player was taken aside for a private. So what's really the problem here? You stupid son of a bitch. No, that's editorializing. Sorry. What's really the problem here? Conversations. I try to be patient and often judge the intent by the response to the private conversation. Some of my favorites.
First of all, I want to give you kudos for that, having the adult conversation and
Yeah.
then judging them, because that's the kind of thing you go into these conversations just ready to hate them for the antics, the shenanigans they pulled, and I give you high marks for being an impartial judge. That's good.
I'm just doing what you said. In response to me asking the player speak up if they didn't understand something. Instead, they use that as an invitation to complain about everything about the game. You can't take feedback. After my describing several instances where they verbally attacked either me or other players. You're picking on me because I was talking to the player privately. You're all ganging up on me because I brought the issues up to the group, and the entire group had issues with that player. Those last two were the same player. Sigh.
Yeah. Man-child.
Why problem make when you no problem have you don't want to make?
In these cases, after having tried to work with the player to no avail, they're invited to not return.
I like that turn of phrase. I think that also needs to be on a t-shirt. You're invited to not return.
In most cases, though, I find that things can be straightened out over a beer or two and some understanding. But it really just takes one asshole to ruin everything, so I tend to be
kinda
protective of my gaming group.
Although, never mind.
And I'm usually that asshole. That's what you were going to say.
No.
Yeah, I know. Yes, you were.
Yeah.
My handling of the passive aggressive how many beers have I had? Passive aggressive types is probably more terse than it should be. I'm open to counseling.
I don't know. It sounds like you're being more than fair. You want me to pick it up,
I got
Mr.
it.
Beers?
Oh,
all right,
yeah,
go
sure,
for
yeah.
it.
Handling a game that isn't.
Well, there's only like
working.
6 pages left, right?
No, there's only like.
Okay.
This is the last
It's
little
perfect.
section.
We parsed this up correctly.
Excellent.
Handling a game that isn't working. Sometimes a game just doesn't work, and you have to really pick up on that.
Mm-hmm.
I always ask if everyone had a good time and if they have feedback at the end of the game.
As Stu does.
But I found a lot of players don't want to be a whiner, so they will suffer through a game.
Yeah, absolutely. Or you say, yeah, it was great.
Yeah.
And you get
That was a lot of fun.
Right. Not fun.
Once upon a time.
Well, to be
Yeah.
fair, at the end of a game sometimes,
You just want to go home. You're tired.
no, yes, but there's also just a lot to process. You're like,
Sure.
Yeah.
I'm not sure I can. It's like you just got off a roller coaster. Your hair's back. You're like, I'm not sure if I can. I equate it to acting. I just got off stage.
That's true.
I cannot give you a straight answer. I need a couple of minutes, 20, 30, an hour, a day to decompress and give you a straight answer because I'm still high.
Yeah, sometimes.
From the moment.
Sometimes there's feedback right away, and then sometimes.
Yeah, if it really
you have
sucked,
to
you'll get it.
Ruminate.
But for the most part, I mean, it's just like if you've ever been on stage and you get off stage,
Mm-hmm.
there's this high, and people come up and ask you questions, and you're like, and something flies out of your mouth, and later you're like, I have no idea what I just said to that person. Something flew out of my mouth. Carry on.
Once upon a time, I asked everyone if we wanted to pick things back up, and I got some feedback along the lines of, the game is depressing. It depressed me. I don't want to play games for that.
That's a totally legitimate thing.
Yeah.
Although, if you go into it and you know you're being playing Call of Cthulhu,
Oh,
Yeah.
I was gonna do. This game, it's so depressing. I mean, it's Elder Gods, and when nobody wins, and I'm going insane. I want to win.
Explainer. We were playing a bleak apocalyptic game where you were just trying to survive. Fighting for food and in fear for your life isn't fun.
I play
Two-
Fallout. It's fucking fun.
or
of my-
Apocalypse World,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
may
yeah.
very well have been what they were playing,
Two of my players are immigrants from other countries.
as
that-
opposed to immigrants
that
from
they
this
left.
country.
Right? That they left because,
Passive
well,
aggressive, man.
it sucked there.
That's not passive aggressive.
All
That's
this did
aggressive
was
aggressive.
remind them about how much their lives used to blow.
So
That's
they're
a point of view.
they're from some war-torn region from the Ceausescu era,
Yeah.
and they escaped here. And it's like, this is just like home.
Yeah.
Where are the death camps
You're
and the
giving me-
mass graves?
Yeah.
I don't want to do some off-color accent, but I have to at this point. Maybe I'll pick India. You are giving me flashbacks of terrible things that have happened. I'm sorry, but I just had to do that
You
in
can
order to put
address
that in
your
perspective for me.
emails
Yes.
to
Stork.
Stork at happyjacks.com. I brought this up to the other players, and everyone was unanimously like, oh, hell, next game. This is a bit of an extreme example, but I always try to stay aware of if people look like they aren't having fun.
Absolutely.
You know,
Yep.
that's tricky, though, because sometimes people are having fun, but they're stacking dice.
Yeah.
And then you look at them and you're like, oh my God, this person is
Yeah.
having fun, and you want to call them out, and they're like, no. And then you ask them later,
Yeah.
like, no, I had a blast.
No,
but it's part of what
even
they
when
do.
I'm GMing, I'll stack dice.
I know.
And I totally-
I know.
and-
Well, here's the thing. It's
Just because it's a fidgety thing.
Yeah.
You need to know your players to know when they're not having fun. Because I stack dice, I fiddle, I look away, I'm checking, but I am paying attention. And to say that, "Why, man, I noticed you were not paying attention to the game," is not fair, because that's not the way I participate
Yeah.
in games. You know,
Yep.
sometimes I'll draw and I'm still
Yeah.
there, but it's a slippery slope. From you standing on high, peering over your GM screen, scanning your players, and trying to, and then interpreting what it is that they're having, if it's fun or not fun.
Cyber Everything says, well, don't run Papers, Please, the RPG. us, please.
What I do now is after every 5 or so games, I put to the group, or I ask the group if they want to continue the game we're playing now or look at something else. This gives the players that would not ordinarily speak up an opportunity to say, oh, this was fun, but let's try other game for a while. What is nice here is that we get to experience lots of different games. Right now, we jump between Trail of Cthulhu and Dresden Files mainly.
Oh, cool.
Yeah.
Ken, Kenigma23 on the forums. Not that I've had time to get on lately, but I'm in there in spirit.
No, I know the name.
Me too. Funny emails is what I remember.
Yep.
P.S. Sorry about the length.
That's what he said.
P.P.S. of the email. What did you think I meant? He knew.
He knew.
Yeah.
He knew where we were going to go because we're 12.
I know. That's what I like about us.
Well, if it's funny once, it's funny every time.
It kind of
Like Call of Duty.
All right.
See?
Yeah, no, it's funny. It's always funny.
Anything important happening here in the
Yeah.
chat room? I don't think so.
Oh, what's the
No.
chat room?
No, it doesn't look like it. There's nothing really important happening there.
Hey, so...
Forrest did say she made her dwarves Hindu in one of her games. People were very mad that they weren't Scottish.
I was going to say, aren't all dwarves Scottish?
I play
No,
Miss
they
for
are
her.
not. All of them are very Scottish at all.
Great, she's being shortest, heightest. I play mine as Vikings.
I might.
They're just angry little Vikings.
Hello, I am a dwarf.
Yes, yeah. I will mess you up with my Viking axe, yeah.
I kind of want to make a Marissa Tomei, my cousin Vinny character now. Yeah, it could be a dwarf. Yeah,
Nah, it's gonna be totally
An
a superhero.
elf.
It's gonna be your like roller girl superhero.
no,
character.
one of my superheroes I'm going to play the next time I get to do a superhero is going to be called Woke AF.
Okay.
Woke as fuck. Woke AF. And they're going to do, I want them to have psychic powers, and then they're going to, like, hurt you, like, I don't know, like your memory of your first lost love pierces they're going to be that kind of, yeah.
And when you make a character, this might be a big topic. When you make a character, you should run the filter of how would this be to GM? And you have to say to yourself, is this a nightmare character that I'm making for my GM just because...
Are you saying to make nightmare characters
No,
for your
I'm
GM?
not. That would have sounded like this. Gina, you always make nightmare characters for your GM.
Yeah.
That's what it would have sounded like. But that's not what I said. What I said was,
Okay.
you have to be careful that the character you make isn't going to be a night for your character, for your GM to play, because nobody's going to have any fun at that point. Where your GM's like, oh my god, I don't know what to do with her, and you're like, oh my god, I'm going to screw up all the rest of the players. It's not going to be fun. So I always run that through my filter too, which is...
That's an interesting thought. I'm thinking about that. Are you thinking like, because I don't necessarily think this is the truth about your character, but you know how everybody says, oh, it's obvious who wasn't sitting at the table making the characters with XYZ, like about...
Albert?
No, not even Albert, sorry, Scully.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Are you talking about like that?
No.
Or just like a character that, no, I didn't mean him specifically, but just like that tonally doesn't feel right, or like a character that a GM is just like, I don't have the slightest idea what to do with that
Well,
person.
you're playing a character that basically messes with people's emotions, and...
No, it wouldn't be emotions. It's the psychic feeling of being hit with the force of the memory of your first love, losing your first love, or something silly like that.
So every person they encounter,
No,
every villain they
it's their
encounter,
superpower.
I know. She's going to hit them with that.
No, that's one of her awesome powers.
All right.
Yeah.
We'll have to see how this goes.
Yeah.
I always run this through my filter, which is, man, if I make a multi-classed dwarf, ranger, rogue, thief, cleric, a wizard, I think my GM's going to kill me. I'll just make a ranger.
Oh, see, I think actually, and that's a bad example anyway, it would be more, because if you create a character with superpowers, their superpowers aren't like in effect 24/7. Like when you're playing a supers game.
No, well, with super games,
it's not like
I
you're-
really tend to default to the armor characters,
Yeah.
and here's why: you can add powers, any power, indiscriminately to your suit, as opposed to being, it's like if you want to gain powers, you can just add it, as opposed to a mutant, which is like, well, I can regenerate, and that's my power, and I just get better at regenerating.
Actually, I think if your superpower and your super name was woke AF, it would be more like I hit you with the force of 100,000 microaggressions, and then that's what you get hit with.
Every time.
I think I totally want to play that character because I think it's funny. You're like, yeah, no.
I've been in games where people sabotage them with funny characters. That's another story. Not that you do that.
It is. I hope not. I was thinking about. See, I almost did my boot.
A boot?
Thinking about.
All right,
Thinking about. When we were talking about backstories, because I think I go between being super specific about certain things with my character and then it's totally open ended. So did you find, because I gave you a lot of bullet points
Yes.
of thoughts, was that too much? Was
No.
it too?
Well, you also created an organization. Mm-hmm. And that in and of itself is always going to be more complicated than just here's
Okay.
a few bullet points on a character.
With
So,
the-
which it will, it's going to, if it, with your permission, I'm going
Let's
to put
clarify.
it in
What game are you
No,
guys
I
talking about?
love that.
What game are you guys talking about
BBT.
for those that are
Blood, Blade, and Tusk.
and Tusk.
right? And is this the first? You didn't actually send out your player questionnaire, did you? Oh, you did. No, you didn't.
No, I don't
No,
think
we did
so.
the connection mechanic from Moment of
Yes,
Truth.
we did.
That's right.
Or the 2d6.
Which can I tell you the coolest thing about that, and this is a perfect example of this is so many different things we talk about in here, where like earlier we were talking about when you write your backstory, but you get to the table, and then that's can be part of the narrative. The GM can
Right.
that I was like, yeah, I don't care. Let me roll on your table for my last one. And the first what I got, I was like, oh, I don't know. And then we totally came up with a thing that I think was super freaking cool. Because I rolled a resolved or unsolved a mystery on the table.
right, yeah.
So we're all talking about, it's 12th, 13th century, and everyone's like making connections to people in their background or between the parties, like how we met or a story in the past. And one of the things you think about in Moment of Truth when you're making connections in your backstory is they can actually be things that happened as well. So they can be PCs, they can be NPCs, but I was like, yeah, I want to roll on the table for at least one. So I rolled on the table, and we're very immersed in this orcs and 12th century Europe, Western Europe, and Catholic Church and all this. And then I rolled, and it was, is it resolved a mystery, or
Uncovered a mystery
or something like that? And
Or
I was like,
discovered a mystery.
so at first I'm like, wow, that's a weird one to get, and then it totally freaking wasn't. Like when you listen to the session 0, I was like, yeah, I think she's playing hide and seek with the priest, and she found basically the equivalent of like a priest hole that was centuries old that had relics, including a scroll, and so it can turn into totally cool things.
I believe, maybe this didn't work, but it was a scroll about. It was an Orcish.
It was an ancient Orcish.
Yeah.
Right.
Which
Yeah.
means they'd been here before.
Right.
So
So totally a random.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Or maybe the scroll isn't from here. Maybe somebody
Right.
from here
I don't know.
has been there and
Right.
back.
Right.
Yep.
It could be any. It
It's
could be
totally
all
cool.
kinds of
So-
things.
And that's the kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah.
One little kernel, and it
Yep.
got built on.
Well, and it's when you kind of, it is both. It can be both terrifying, but it is, I think, so exciting to be able to kind of give part of yourself up like that creatively for the story.
Right.
Whether it's through the randomizer of the mechanics and the dice in the game that say, you want to be the hero and you want to succeed, but I totally freaking failed that role. Well, maybe that's actually going to create a more interesting story with a better climax or.
It always does.
Yep.
I rolled up Trig out of the Yes, it was
Yeah.
Bill Star Wars, but I rolled up a non-combat character. He failed. He ended up in jail. It was terrible. Ended up playing him as a coward, and to this day, he's the most hated character I've ever played. And yet, all of his antics, it's the most told stories
Yep.
because he was a coward.
Yep.
I've modeled him after Benny from The Mummy. Remember Benny?
Oh, yes.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah.
Yeah, little slimy little
Yeah.
guy. He was always like, and he gets his
Yep.
his comeuppance in the end. But the point is, those are the characters that are more interesting. That's the more interesting story to tell. My sorcerer, full of himself, cocksure, full of himself, decides to
Yeah.
go down the corridor on his own, and
Yep.
almost had a TPK. But that's the stories that we tell.
Yep.
It's the failures. It's the things that were random that are more interesting than. I mean, nobody talks about the fights we win. Very rarely.
even
And the
those-
fights you win are boring.
But, or maybe they're all the sweeter because the team is not a team of, it's like how I talked about how I loved that was this like awakening for me with the supers game, because what I loved is that I'm the mundane super in this group of like godlike demigod superheroes. And so I loved that dynamic, that it's just like, I have Hawkeye with the trick arrow with frickin' Thor with Mjolnir.
Right.
Right.
And you're
You
like,
know? Yeah.
I can't compete.
So it's the dichotomy of that, and it's like you said. So there are interesting character relationships and narratives, story beats
driven
that
by
come
those
up.
random.
Yeah, and then so the wins are still cool, but it's cooler to have this like interruption of greatness from.
And in the wins, there's fails.
Yes.
And the fails are the really
Yep.
cool thing. I mean, we all, yes, we may have won the war,
Yep.
but it was his sacrifice, or it was this moment, and it was that. Those are the ones we talk about. It's
I think so,
seriously.
too. Yeah.
We read stories about where people have failed. I mean, look at Game of Thrones, where
Yeah.
we talk about the body count and the stories that they had, and we don't really care about who's still living. We're really more concerned about what happened to this person and why they're gone.
Well, because if you sit down to write that story, you're like, Rob, King of the North. He's totally. Oh wait.
And then
what? Red Wedding. Then just
Spoilers.
Like, yeah, there's like, but it's not the story you necessarily expect. It's
Exactly.
But it becomes better.
Right.
Honestly, it really.
It really does.
It really does.
That story happening, that Red Wedding
Mm-hmm.
moment, everybody's like, because we're all so used to everything gets tied up with a little bow, and yes, he's going to be king, and then all of a sudden he's not, and there's no way. And that's the way role playing games work too, because we have these dice randomizers, and all of a sudden you're standing there with the big bad, and you fail.
Yep.
And that story takes a completely different turn, and then even the GM's like,
Yeah.
I need to go to the bathroom.
Yeah.
Right?
Well,
I need to work out some stuff.
Some of that is the fun of the mechanic in the game, introducing unexpected outcomes.
Well, no, that's exactly what it is.
But the other part is the GM and knowing and feeling where it would be good for that story to go. And honestly, I think it is not as fun or fulfilling, maybe is the right word.
Fulfilling is a great, yes.
To be constantly rewarded with
I agree.
Oh, yeah.
the win.
The Monty Hall dungeon is boring.
Yeah, right? Yeah. And so I like
Except when you're
that.
leveling your character.
Yeah,
Yeah.
right? Except if you're a WoW and you just need
If
your
you
tier
count gold
3
pieces
stuff.
as XP.
Yeah.
Which we did.
Back in the day,
Or
though, but
asses.
back in the day, that's what it was. Here, I always equated to the fact that back in the day, we didn't have stuff. We were living in a room with our parents, and it was their stuff. But now that I have stuff, I'm like, all right, I actually own stuff. Got that. Tick that box. I don't actually need to pretend to own stuff, because I do. I'm going to pretend to not own stuff. Whoa, that's weird.
Yeah, exactly.
You're always playing to things you aren't. Mm-hmm. And like when you're a 14-year-old teenager who doesn't own anything, you're playing to own stuff. And now that you're a 40-year-old guy, 50-year-old guy, you're exploring other avenues.
Yeah.
I think it's more interesting to fail, and the fails are always the more interesting stories. And the fails are what we talk about in books. They talk about in plots. We talk about. I mean, certainly, Grapes of Wrath is a story of one big fail.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
And that's where interesting stories come from.
Yeah.
It's not about the wins. And to be, how many times have you sat at a table or and somebody sat around and explained to you how awesome their half-elf ranger was for 20 minutes, and all the awesome things that half-elf ranger did, and how boring that is. And you're just trying to find a reason to get the hell out of there. The win isn't interesting. But if somebody comes up to me and tells me about the half-elf ranger that failed and died in a blaze of glory on a bridge holding off the Orcish brigade while everybody made their escape, I'm in. I'm in. That's a much more interesting story.
No, I totally agree. I just, and I don't think you immediately, and I don't think it depends on what age you are either, because I didn't start playing role-playing games until I was an adult. And you go into it thinking that's kind of what you're on a hero's journey, and the hero's journey, but you're not necessarily thinking about the fact that the real hero's journey comes with triumphs and tragedies.
Well, you don't understand the journey. You just understand the
the
hero part. You don't understand that there's failure involved. And when you're young, everything's hard. Everything fails. You don't want to play that in your real life. But when you get older, you realize that failure is what is interesting.
It really is.
Well, it's interesting in stories.
It is.
It's not that interesting in real life.
Well, that's
it's interesting.
True.
That's
but
the
it's
point.
not pleasant.
That's true.
And that's really the point.
Yeah, a more nuanced story and things unexpected conflict
and that's why games like Apocalypse World and Fate and where they have a mechanic for I don't want to say failure, but for randomness. I get that, because you have to force some players, to embrace the failure, to embrace change, to embrace a randomness, to embrace something that's wrong, that doesn't go with the way they are. There needs to be a mechanic for them to be okay with it. I get that. Not everybody's able to just say, well, I completely failed. Well, what happened? Let me tell you what happened.
Yeah.
Triumph following tragedy is a much sweeter triumph.
But also,
absolutely.
But also, failing is so much more interesting than winning.
It is, and it's, we've told a lot of stories, and I know I've told some of the same stories, but there are times when you initially, even knowing that the unexpected result of the fail or the not triumphant aspect or direction of the story will sometimes make you feel like, wait, what the fuck? But then it's like, oh my God, that was so much better and so much more poignant or meaningful or created such a better story.
To be honest, that's one of the benefits of when people make a critical fail, if you're playing a game with critical fails, asking them how they fail.
I totally agree.
I like it because it takes the onus off the GM.
Yeah.
But I love it because it allows the players to describe to you how they failed. And the players, 9 times out of 10, love that.
Yeah.
I very rarely run into somebody that goes, I stub my toe and I move on. Very rarely. Most of the time, as Stu has pointed out, people make it worse than they would ever come up with.
And I think
it's so much more interesting.
And I think this ties back into something you kind of already said, but the stories we've told playing role-playing games, to me, that kind of sing in my heart still are those ones where there have been total unexpected fails and penultimate moments that the resolution of those created this total real story beat that
I agree.
Yeah.
I agree. I don't know how we got on this topic.
I don't know either. I can't remember.
We should follow that through for our next game. So
yeah.
Pretty
absolutely.
awesome how we wandered here. It's cool.
Cool.
I've been talking to people in the chat.
Cool.
They're all like, what are they talking about?
They say you're just trying to cover for the fact that you roll shitty.
Yeah, but I don't.
It depends on
really
the game.
Don't.
You were been on fire the last couple of games.
Yeah.
Maybe the streak's broken.
And again, embracing the failure. It's so much funnier. It's so much
is.
more fun to know that I roll bad.
It would not be funny if it said, "Oh yeah, Stork rolls great all the time."
Yeah,
that'd be exactly how it would be described, and there wouldn't be any
Stork is good at D&D.
A couple things. Tomorrow at 5 p.m. Pacific time, Desert of Despair returns. That's Jason's D&D 5e game that he is GMing. That you're in that. Kimmy, Rob.
Yeah, Jose Rob and Jib.
There's a lot of buzz about it. Jose Rob is very, very anxious to play.
Yeah.
And then
it's a fun game.
On Sunday at 4 p.m. Pacific time, not 5, we're moving the game to 4 because Sunday's technically a school night.
Yes.
Mote of Sin, that will be episode 29 or 30. I don't remember which one
30.
it is. It'll be
Last
30.
one was 29.
30.
Yeah.
So that should probably include Prince Riley's Elysium.
It could. We are
Oh.
missing Jessie, so
Yes.
things are going to be weird, but we'll see. Can she Skype in?
No.
She'll be on
she's
stage.
going to be on stage.
She'll be
Yeah.
fine.
And then also, if you're going to be at Gen Con, I'm going to be at Gen Con.
Yay.
Come and I will Twitter or something. But I want to meet as many people as I possibly can. That's my goal for going to Gen Con.
And again, please introduce yourself with your name and who you are, and forgive us if we don't remember.
And don't be shy about approaching
Yeah,
and talking
totally.
to me. Because I'm literally there. I mean, I'm not signed up for any games, and I don't know if I'm going to have enough luggage space to bring stuff to run games. I honestly don't know. But I do want to meet as many listeners as I possibly can. So
Stu's really approachable. He's not Will Wheaton. It's all good.
I'm not approachable, but I like our
It's
listeners.
kind of true.
I'm kind of a
Fair enough.
I'm kind of a grumpy asshole. But
He's nice to people that are, yeah.
if you give me a beer, I'm not a grumpy asshole.
You're going to have so
I'm a
many beers.
talkative asshole.
You're going to be sitting there at this table with like 30
I may
beers.
die. I may die.
Happy.
Happy. And then also September 1st, 2nd, 3rd, and 4th, you can come to
Yeah.
Gateway 2017.
SeptemberCon.
I'll be there with my kids in tow. And I'm thinking about running, what's it called?
Oh, Hero Kids or
Legend of the Elements, which is the
is that a Legends of the Five?
no. I thought it
Sounded
was.
like
That's
it.
why I bought it.
Yeah.
But it's not. It is Avatar: The Last Airbender.
Oh, awesome.
Really?
Legend of Korra.
Apocalypse World hack.
Nice.
Nice.
So
I'm gonna maybe.
there's
I'm
much,
reading through it, and it's like,
there's much buzz on the forum about bringing your kids to con, and there's more than one Happy Jacks
Yeah.
listener that now have kids that they're bringing. They brought some last time. They brought some the time before, yours included. I have now seen the next generation of gamers.
yeah.
Yeah.
They're showing up at our cons. Stu has changed the way he's running games now. He's
Yep.
running more towards kids.
Well, yeah.
Your kids had a blast.
Yeah.
Last time they were there.
They're so pissed off. I'm not taking them to Gen Con with me. They're so like, no, I'm not taking you to Gen Con
Yeah.
with me. First off, it's like
First-
50,000 fat
taking-
beards. Come on.
yeah.
Come on. I don't want you around them.
But
And
Yeah.
I mean, and they're old enough now where they can kind of go off on their own. They don't have to be
Oh,
with Dad
that's
the whole
true.
time. So they're like, we're gonna go. There's a computer game section. We're gonna go, and there's like teams and stuff. So we're gonna go and get on a team and go play a game. And they disappeared for a couple hours, and I went and checked on them, and I saw them there. And I'm like, great, no
Cool.
problem. And one of the things I'm going to do at this next Strategicon is there's going to be a LARP 101 at the 2 p.m. slot on Saturday. I'm going to go to that seminar
Really?
because it's basically like here's an intro to LARPing, and then they're going to like run you through like a basic scenario or something immediately after that.
Cool.
So I don't know if Allie and Zachary are going to be interested in that. If they are, they're welcome to come with me. But I want to go do that because I'm very interested in see how LARPs get GM'd.
Yeah.
I think
So
it'll
we've been
inform a lot of
talking
GMing because I've actually started taking an interest in that because we were talking to Mare, we were talking to Kurt. They're talking about the vampire LARP and what's and what it takes, and I'm like, there's some really interesting lessons that we can glean from this thing that we've been poking
absolutely.
fun at.
Absolutely.
Because the immediacy of dealing with a LARP is different than the sort of the abstractness that you deal with in a anyway. Well,
No,
the other
definitely.
point I wanted to finish with, that's maybe
Yeah.
another topic, but the other point I wanted to make was that there's a lot of listeners and stuff that are now bringing their kids. When we
Yeah.
started this, first of all, female gamers were unheard of. There was Kimmy, and that was it. And it was weird. And now all of a sudden, we've got female gamers, lots of them, as well as children. I guess when you put the two together, that's what happens. And I've seen this whole progression
Captain
since
Patriarchy.
gaming. Yeah, go ahead. Judge
No,
me.
I'm
It's
teasing.
fine. You can judge. It's all right. I
You're
set
like,
it up that
put
way.
women with the children.
Children.
And they see how they
Yeah.
are barefoot and
Go
have their
ahead.
pregnant
No,
bellies?
I didn't say that.
I'm so joking. You totally didn't do that.
Yeah, but I'm
If
gonna
anyone
get-
really
I'm
thinks
gonna
Dirk
get
said
hate
that,
mail, yeah.
I'm so teasing him.
They will. They
yeah,
will.
because he's not meaning that.
No, but I'm loving that whole new aspect of this of the cons.
Yeah.
I have seen more children at this last con than I've ever seen at any con
And I
before.
talked to Jim.
That is super
Jim,
true.
Jim was over here this last weekend for a little bit, and we had a conversation, and they're really trying. They understand long term that the children of gamers are the most
super
likely
cool.
people to become gamers to keep things going.
Hey, little kid.
Yeah,
First
that's what
one's
I-
free. You're cool, aren't you?
I think I might. I just told Tums today I'm thinking about running
A boot?
I know I did it again.
You did.
You did.
Uh-oh. Sorry.
You've been doing it a lot recently. You're going back to
know.
Minnesota.
I
don't
think
know
you're
what's
turning
happening.
Canadian. I think you're
I
turning
am.
Canadian. I really think so.
Yeah, and
No
you ran
sex,
a
no
kids
drugs,
game.
no
That was
more.
the last time you.
I did.
The first time you GM'd in
Yeah,
a long time. It
so
was a kids game, and
I
you
was-
were over the moon about it.
No, I was so happy, and it was so much fun. And I'm thinking of maybe Dungeon World.
Okay, there you go.
Because pretty easy mechanic and
Well, maybe.
fantasy.
Hey, maybe Zachary and Allie can sign up for the game, and then they can bug me about learning.
you just did.
Apocalypse.
See? Oh, look at that! No, but see who's turning Canadian. You almost did in a boot.
Did I?
Sort of. It kind of was there. I swear. Yeah.
Now, okay, what's the difference between Wisconsin, Fargo, and Minnesota? Is there a difference? Because, they're going
well,
crazy
Fargo
down by
is-
the lake there.
Fargo is in North Dakota.
Dakota, yeah.
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 Wisconsin is...
That people there are smarter because the air is cold.
Oh, right there. No, it's cold in Minnesota there, but
Yeah. It's...
a lot of cheese.
I don't know where that accent comes from.
It
'cause
comes
I've-
from Norwegian. It's
Oh,
sort of
no,
a
I
yacht,
know
Swedish
that,
yacht, but that's...
I've told this story before, but I had cousins that lived across town from me, like 5 miles, that totally talked like that, and my family did not. So
You were raised
there's
proper.
Did you watch a lot of TV?
No, she just had people that cared.
enough. I mean, we got kicked outside to play like we were supposed to, but
In the 30-degree
Because
weather.
TV has like that neutral accent.
maybe. I did watch Canadian television, though, because we had the Canadian
That
broadcast.
didn't help. You watch Bizarre with John Biner? That didn't help.
Oh, what's the show with that? Better than being slapped in the belly with a wet trout. What's that guy?
Red Green.
No, it wasn't Red Green. It was the
Red
science
Green is
guy.
the
It was the
shit.
science guy. Forrest will
Oh.
know.
Yeah, that and SCTV, which I know everybody could see at some point, but yeah. it was a
The
lot
Red
of
Green show's the
SCTV.
best
Red
Canadian
Green
show
is
ever.
amazing. Yeah, I remember.
we're gonna fix it with duct tape. Yeah, well, there's old John there. Oh, look at that, the door fell off. You know the way to fix that, duct tape.
Yeah, but it definitely is. It's the Scandinavian trickle down of
Oh,
the
yeah.
Scandinavian
Yeah, they're going crazy
accent.
up there by the lake there. Oh, it's
Yep.
so- oh my God.
Yep.
Little problem with your detective work there, Marge. Okay.
That's totally fine.
I don't know why we've gotten off on tangents. I blame
Come
myself.
on.
I'm going to
Beer.
blame these beers.
It's
that
not
you-
in here?
What's not in there? The thing you were trying to think of? The
Mysteries from Beyond. That was
slap.
it.
Is that the slap in the belly with the...
Well, you could send him a letter, and you will receive. You will receive, and you will only receive a thank you and congratulations from us, which is better than a slap in the belly with a red trout.
It probably is.
Never heard of that. I'm going to have to go check
Me
it out.
either.
He was kind of this nerdy-looking guy, and he did this weird science thing.
Is it Canadian Science Elvira?
Wow. Oh, Elvira.
Elvira.
Elvira. Do you remember?
Elvira was... I never heard about Elvira until I came to Southern California because she didn't really make it past here, but maybe you guys know about her. If not, go ahead and Google her. She's the most she's a sarcastic vampire.
Elvira, Princess of the Dark,
Yeah,
I think was her
yeah.
total.
And she's the most sarcastic,
Cassandra
snarky...
Peterson.
and she would... Yeah, Cassandra Peterson. And she would... She's had at least one movie on her
Who was
belt
also
now.
a stunning
Yeah.
redhead.
Yeah,
Oh, yeah.
And you wouldn't know that
Yeah.
because she wore that black
That
wig.
huge black
she's
wig.
snarky
Yeah.
and irreverent, and she would host these
She's
B movies
hilarious.
at like midnight in California.
Yeah.
I never knew who she was till I came to California, but genius. Check her out.
Yeah.
You can probably find her on YouTube's and other places. But Elvira, Mistress of the Dark, and is the most sarcastic. Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Yeah,
Met her.
she's hot.
Met her.
She used to be at Knott's Berry Farm when
and
I first started going.
I could be wrong, but I think she was a groundling, or could be wrong. I
Oh,
might be thinking of
maybe.
someone else. But she has a lot of theatrical training. She fell into this job, and it became a career.
And it was just like this weird, super campy
Yeah.
little
totally.
intro vignettes between shit horror
She was
films.
like, they're like Svengoolie, or
Yeah.
she would do these B movies, and she
Well, what's her toes? Vampira.
yeah, that's
That
what
was
I'm
what she was. Yeah.
She's a much more sarcastic
Yeah.
vampire.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched. There was a
snarky.
reality show.
And funny as hell.
Fun.
Yeah.
That's the point. Yeah,
think it was-
they would cut from like literally in mid-scene of the movie to come
Yep.
to Elvira
Yes.
going, "What the hell?"
Well, they did a reality
It was
show.
so funny.
That she helped judge where they were looking for the next Elvira.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I even watched that because
She's
she's
still
amazing.
There
she
won't
still
be a
shows up
next
occasionally, and
Elvira.
she still looks
No.
great. But
Yeah,
anyway,
'cause she's
everybody
too
check it
cool.
out. Elvira, Mistress of the Dark.
Yes.
Sit through a couple. Her snarkiness and her basically she introed these terrible B movies, and we've all seen them.
Yeah.
Oh, and there's a Pop TV vinyl
There you
figure
go.
you can buy, a little bobblehead.
Of Elvira, and she parlayed that little sort of
Yeah.
cable access show
Yep.
into a movie.
It
and a
wasn't
career.
cable access. It was actually on
Was
like
it on like a
Channel 5. Like I think it was on KTLA.
really?
I never heard of it until I got here.
Well, I was here.
It was
What was the Joe?
was-
when did it
was
come on?
actually-
Midnight.
No.
Joe Flatterly, right?
Yeah, what was his version of the 3D House of Stewardesses?
Yes. Oh, with
3D
with
House of
Malachor.
Pancakes. Yeah.
I want to say it was on
was
Saturdays in like the late afternoon.
Okay.
Really?
I think
That,
it may have been on in the evenings as well.
on
But
the
that's
evenings.
that's when but I remember it on weekends.
They might have even
It may have been reruns.
sold like VHS tapes back in the day of
They did.
her
I'm sure they
stuff
did.
doing
They
I'm
did.
sure they did.
like with her cutting into the
Yep, they did, and she would show up at various. She parlayed that into this career.
Oh yeah.
And she owned it, which
Yep.
I loved. And then when she did the Elvira movie, she wrote and produced, and she got a lot of money out of it. And I think most of America went, who?
In 1988, Elvira, Mistress of the Dark DVD.
There it is.
Elvira Haunted Hills.
The movie?
Elvira's
awesome.
Haunted Hills, 2001.
Is that the movie?
There's
No,
a
the
bunch of
movie's
movies.
something
Oh
else.
yeah, Elvira's Movie Macabre Bloody Madness collection.
Movie macabre. That's
Anyway, check it
Oh,
out.
those are probably re-releases of films.
We got to
Yeah.
stop this. We are getting
I
off
know.
on so many tangents,
It's fun,
and people
though.
have to drive. I've got to go clean
Yeah.
out Bill's garage tomorrow. This is getting crazy.
Thank you for joining us for season 19, episode 17 of Happy Chicks RPG Podcast. My name is Stu.
My name is Gina.
Wait a minute. I'm waiting for the.
Thank you very much. Don't forget tomorrow, 5 p.m. D&D Deserts of Despair.
You're shouting.
And that's because I'm listening to the music really loud, and and I'm trying to get over the sound of the thing. I've got a bed down, and I'm talking over it. And on Sunday, 4 p.m. Pacific time, Mode of Sin session 30. Thank you very much. We'll do the song
Monday masks.
Monday Masks.
Masks.
Hero has find the fatal savage lands. Evil plans will be usurping. Though we could do with less burping, Happy Jack's podcast will be douchebag song.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
Bacchus must now his crown resign. I am the holy god of wine, the holy god of wine. 'Tis not fit that red should be. 'Tis not fit that competition said. In competition said. In competition said. Who can drink more? Who can drink more? Drink 10 times more than he. Can drink 10 times more than he. Who can drink 10 times more? Drink 10 times, drink more than he. Make a new world. Make power, divine world. Start make on else but wine. A new world. Powers divine. A world. Make a new world. Start with else but wine. Make a new world. Ye powers divine. With nothing else but wine. A new world. Start with nothing else but wine. Let wine be earth and air. Let wine be earth and air. Let wine be earth and air. fire and the earth there and let that wine and let that wine be all for me and let that wine be all for me.
The preceding program has been a presentation of the Angry Folk Media Empire.
Bum, 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 bum.